Chapter 2118. Tokyo Area Airport. In the crowded airport lobby, Noah and Hina walked in from the direction of the main entrance. They followed the signs and arrived at the arrival area. It didn't take much effort for Noah to discover a pair of rather conspicuous partners among the people who had arrived at the airport. Of course, it was a police officer pair. The initiator was a young man in his 20s wearing a uniformed suit. The initiator was a young girl who was about 13 or 14 years old. She had 2 ponytails and was wearing a fancy dress, a jacket, and a pair of high boots. The police officer pair was squeezed in the crowd and quarreled for some reason. "I say, Rintaro, is the president really back?" "I say, Yenju, you've asked this question no less than 10 times. I've also answered you no less than 10 times. At least, that's what I said on the phone. But didn't you say the president would come to pick us up? I haven't seen her yet. I just called Miss Mugging 20 minutes ago. How could she be here so soon? Could it be that you, this muddle-headed fool, got the time wrong? You're the only one who would get the time wrong, not me. Rintaro, you're so annoying. No wonder Mugging doesn't care about you. Even her childhood friend doesn't like you. I think you can only be single for the rest of your life. So noisy. It's not your turn to criticize me, you underage brat." Seeing the clown pair quarreling among themselves and scaring away the pedestrians around them, Noah and Hina looked at each other. Then they couldn't help but laugh at the same time. Just as Hina opened her mouth and was about to call for help, Noah pressed on Hina's shoulder. He looked at the initiator who was quarreling with the initiator and slowly raised the corners of his mouth. In the next second, Noah's figure flashed and disappeared on the spot. At the same time, the 2 police officers who were quarreling had a serious expression on their faces. Both of them sensed it. A presence was approaching them at an extremely fast speed. Immediately, a figure suddenly appeared behind the young man, and suddenly reached out his hand. "Rintaro!" Yenju exclaimed. However, before Yenju could speak, Rintaro had already made his move. Slap! With a crisp sound, Rintaro raised his left hand and grabbed the hand that was reaching for his right shoulder. However, that hand suddenly trembled and easily broke free from Ryotaru's capture. Clenching it into a fist, it abruptly punched out. "Hoo!" The fist whistled through the air and instantly closed in on Ryotaru. A gust of wind blew against Ryotaru's face, causing his pupils to shrink. This was an expert. Ryotaru instantly made this judgment. At the same time, Rintaro's body suddenly tilted to the side, causing the punch that carried a strong gust of wind to land on empty air. Heavenly Child Battle Technique Form 2, Level 16. Just as Noah's fist brushed past Ryotaru's shoulder and missed, Ryotaru pressed one hand against the ground and spun his body. Hidden Zen. Black Wind. The swift and fierce roundhouse kick was as sharp as a blade. With a piercing sound, it kicked toward Noah's missing arm. If this roundhouse kick had really landed, then even a well-trained police officer would be paralyzed for an entire day, and would not be able to exert any strength again if one of his arms was not broken. Unfortunately, almost at the same time, Noah suddenly turned his fist into a palm, and with a backhand chop, he collided heavily with Rintaro's ferocious kick. Bang! A low sound of collision rang out. A strong wind blew. The powerful force caused Rintaro's entire body to tumble a few times, and he continued to tumble out. At this time, Ryotaru was finally shocked. Although he did not release his prosthetic arm, without using the ability of the mechanical soldiers, Ryotaru had already used all his combat power. Compared to Ryotaru 3 years ago, who would have been trash if he did not release his prosthetic arm, Ryotaru's skills had improved a lot after 3 years. Compared to himself 3 years ago when he released his prosthetic arm, Ryotaru was almost on par with him. In the end, not only did he not gain any advantage in one move, but he was also suppressed. While Ryotaru was still in shock, and before he could stabilize his body and mind, Noah had already dashed out. In a flash, he appeared in front of Ryotaru. His punches and kicks were like a storm as he unleashed an extremely violent attack. Ryotaru's heart tightened. He could not care less. With a leap, he got into a fighting stance and faced Noah's fierce attack. Bang, 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 bang. Amidst the continuous sounds of punches and kicks colliding, 2 figures, one in front and one behind, one advancing and one retreating, one attacking and one defending, began a fierce battle in the entire airport's lobby. What? Is this a brawl? Idiot. If a brawl like this is normal, then the police don't deserve to live. Is that a fight between police officers? Hurry up and run. The entire airport was suddenly in a mess. The people around all fled in panic, hating that they were not born with a pair of legs. It was no wonder that the general public was so panicked. In the police force, some of them were outlaws, and they were allowed to carry weapons and guns. In the eyes of the general public, they were just a bunch of vicious criminals. Even though most of the world's police officers had joined Fairy Tale and become members of Fairyland, which improved the quality of the police officers, Fairy Tale did not accept just anyone. Those who were obviously disobedient and did not care about the life and death of the initiator would all be rejected, and even taught a harsh lesson. Only the cursed child, who was the initiator, would be accepted unconditionally. As a result, without the initiator, many of the initiators who did not pass the test could not become police officers. They could only complain to the International Initiator Supervision Agency. However, the current Fairy Tale had already formed a country of its own, and it was very powerful. If the International Initiator Supervision Agency were to intervene, it would only turn into an international problem, and they would not be able to bear the consequences. Therefore, the International Initiator Supervision Agency today was not as influential as it was 3 years ago. At least, they could not interfere with Fairy Tale. As a result, the initiators who lost the initiator would naturally hold a grudge, and would often find fault with Fairy Tale's police officers, which would turn into conflicts. From the perspective of outsiders, there was now a bad police officer looking for fault with a kind police officer, which led to a conflict. Naturally, they would run as far as they could to avoid using their guns and getting hit by stray bullets. If that happened, they would not even have a place to cry. In such a chaotic situation, Yenju finally reacted. Rintaro. The moment the call was heard, Yenju turned into a phantom. Whoosh! Her petite figure carried with it an astonishing speed, like a meteor streaking through the air. Just like that, Yenju rushed out. Her eyes turned scarlet as she violently shot toward Noah and Rintaro, who were fighting with their fists and feet. Immediately after, the shockingly fast Yenju flashed out from behind Rintaro. She flew up and kicked out like a flash of light. Whether it was her movement speed or her attack speed, they were both astonishingly fast. No, Rintaro's expression changed. Perhaps it was because of the suddenness of the situation, but Yenju's kick was already serious. If this kick landed, it would not be as simple as a serious injury. It might even kill him. Just as Ryutaru's expression abruptly changed, another petite figure suddenly appeared. Just like Yenju, she darted out from behind Noah. She raised her scarlet eyes and raised her arms. Boom! Yenju's heavy kick landed heavily on the slender arms that were crossed, causing a muffled explosion. It caused a circle of strong wind to expand, like a whirlwind that swept towards the surroundings. That won't do. In the next instant, the young girl who blocked Yenju's kick smiled faintly. Even if you're Miss Yenju, I won't allow you to hurt my brother. Hearing this, Yenju, who hadn't yet retracted her kick, faltered slightly. Then, she finally got a good look at the person who had just arrived. Hina. Hina? Rintaro was also stunned. Then he saw Noah standing behind Hina, who was looking at him with a hint of a smile on his face. The shock on his face quickly turned into joy. No. Chapter 21:19. At this moment, Yenju finally noticed the identity of the person who had attacked Rintaro. Her scarlet eyes first regained their original color. Then she became agitated. Guild Master. I've missed you so much. In the next second, Yenju cheered and threw herself at Noah. Noah instinctively opened his arms and caught Yenju in his embrace. The smile on his face did not falter as he rubbed Yenju's little head and laughed out loud. Long time no see, Yenju. You've grown up, and much stronger than before. As he said this, Noah raised his head and looked at Rintaro with a smile. You too, Rintaro. It's been 3 years, and you've become a different person. After all, in order to not be left behind by Miss Mugging, Hina, and the other newbies in the guild. I've been working so hard to get here. Rintaro stepped forward and thumped Noah's chest. You, on the other hand, have disappeared for 3 years, and now you're setting me up the moment you return. Don't you think about how much effort I've put in for your guild? That was the truth. When they first turned to the establishment of Fairyland, which was also the development plan Noah had set before he left, Rintaro had begun his mission with Yenju as the leader of the tour group that Fairy Tail sent to various parts of the world in order to bring the cursed children from all over the world to Fairy Tail. Over the past 3 years, Rintaro and Yenju had been traveling all over the world, repeating the task of secretly sending the cursed children from all over the world to Fairyland. The hardships they encountered during that period were not something that could be easily dealt with. Leaving aside the difficulty of moving the cursed children around the world, just moving all of them to Fairyland was a problem in and of itself. After all, unlike in the past when one could travel between countries by taking a plane, in today's era, the threat of protozoa was almost everywhere. Even if there were still flights, they had to be equipped with police and guards. Otherwise, they could only wait to be eaten by protozoa. Naturally, the mass transfer of the cursed children could not be carried out openly. Therefore, the entire transfer process, from the preparation of transportation to the deployment of guards, had to be handled by Fairy Tail. In light of this, it was easy to imagine how much effort and hardship Rintaro had put in as the leader of the tour group for the past 3 years. Especially a year ago, when the various countries around the world finally noticed the mass exodus of the cursed children, and started to control the outflow of the cursed children, the tour group led by Rintaro had to face difficulties and obstructions from various countries. Sometimes they even had to fight with high-ranking police officers. This kind of life could be said to be like going from the water to the fire. He didn't know how many Azura battlefields he had experienced. Thus, in Fairy Tail, the most hardworking ones were Mugging, Hina, and Xiaoshi, while the most hardworking ones were Rintaro and Yenju. I know you are a great contributor. Noah shrugged. However, thanks to this, you were able to grow rapidly and rise all the way to the top 10 of the IP ranking, right? If it wasn't for the many dangers and experiences he had experienced, how could Rintaro's strength increase so quickly? Even if he didn't use the ability of the mechanical soldiers, he would still be able to compete with his full strength 3 years ago. Yenju's strength increased so quickly because of this, right? Noah patted Yenju's head. Could it be that you have also reached domain? Ehe. Yenju didn't answer. She only made a V gesture to Noah, but it was more useful than any answer. However, it was not difficult to guess that Yenju had reached domain. After all, before Noah left, Yenju had already reached her growth limit. Her speed could no longer increase, and her ability could no longer be improved. But just now, Yenju's speed had reached an astonishing level. It was much faster than when Noah left 3 years ago. Since she had already reached her growth limit, it was reasonable to say that she could no longer grow. However, Yenju's speed had greatly increased. Wasn't this the proof that she had broken through her growth limit and reached domain? Hina reached domain 2 years ago, and I reached domain 1 year ago, Yenju said proudly with her hands on her waist. If it wasn't like this, how could Rintaro have reached the top 10 of the IP ranking by himself? Although it's infuriating, without Yenju, I wouldn't have been able to squeeze into the top 10. Rintaro scratched his head and sighed. Every time this happens, I have to admire Miss Mugung. It's really depressing. Rintaro and Yenju's IP ranking was 7th. Mugging and Xiaoshi's IP ranking was 3rd. Undoubtedly, not only did Xiaoshi not reach the domain realm, his combat ability was also not very strong. However, Mugging was still able to reach the top 3 in the IP ranking. It was no wonder that Rintaro was so impressed. Of course, although Xiaoshi's combat ability was not outstanding, he was very smart and could assist Mugging in various situations. For Mugging to reach this ranking, Xiaoshi's contribution could not be ignored. Oh right. Yenju looked around. Mugging and Xiaoshi didn't come? As pillars of the guild, those two are now public figures from head to toe. In the eyes of others, they could even be considered as the head of state and assistant of Fairyland, which is different from us, Tina said. If we let Miss Mugging and Xiaoshi come to the airport, it will definitely cause a big commotion. Moreover, Miss Mugging is currently a terrorist target, right? Rintaro's expression became serious. Then all the more reason to not come to this kind of public place. It's too dangerous. Speaking of which, why did you suddenly come back? Noah asked. Weren't we still continuing the tour group mission in another country? It's all because of Mugung. Yinju said loudly. Rintaro said that the countries all over the world proposed a meeting with our guild. They definitely have bad intentions. That's why we rushed back. Although Miss Mugging is very strong and would definitely bring Hina along just in case, I still don't think it's very safe. Rintaro nodded. This time, the countries all over the world are obviously targeting our guild. It's hard to guarantee that they won't play some tricks in the dark. If that's the case, we won't be able to wait patiently outside. That's why we came back. Yinju giggled. And we also heard from the guild that the guild leader is back. That's great. In short, you guys being able to rush over is a great help. Noah looked at Rintaro and Yinju and smiled mockingly. With the famous Tank and Tornado, who are ranked 7th in the IP ranking as guards, how reliable. Hearing this, Yinju smiled proudly. Rintaro also smiled, but it was a bitter smile. This sentence, coming from the hermit, who is ranked 1st in the IP ranking, isn't convincing at all. In Fairy Tail, Rintaro and Yinju were ranked 5th in the IP ranking. Of the top 10 strongest police partners in the IP ranking, 7 of them were in the guild. These 7 pairs of police officers were ranked 1st, 3rd, 4th, 6th, 7th, 9th, and 10th in the IP rankings. Therefore, in the guild, Rintaro and Yinju were ranked 5th in the guild. Of course, the IP ranking set up by the International Association of Pioneers wasn't based on the strength of each police partner. Instead, it was based on the achievements of each partner, even if this ranking was equivalent to a strong or weak partner. That was why, in Rintaro's opinion, there were only 2 people in the guild that he couldn't defeat no matter what he did. One was Mugung. The other was Noah. Even after 3 years, Rintaro still didn't know how much Noah's strength had improved. However, Rintaro still didn't have the confidence to defeat Noah. Therefore, whether it was from the IP ranking or from the actual situation, Rintaro felt that he wasn't as reliable as Noah. I just hope that I can help a little bit with the guards. This was Rintaro's thought. In this regard, Noah naturally nodded. Then let's go first. Rintaro and Yinju both nodded. Chapter 21-20. In other people's eyes, the return of Rintaro and Yinju might have made Muging's safety more secure, and made the terrorist attack more suspenseful. However, in Noah's eyes, there was not much of a difference. Although it was a little inappropriate to say this, Noah had arranged for Orpheus and Lilith to be Muging's guards. Others might not know how powerful the 2 little girls were, but how could Noah not know? Even in the demon high school, where gods and demon kings were everywhere, Orpheus and Lilith were among the strongest dragon gods. In the Dark Bullet world, Orpheus and Lilith were truly invincible, and it was impossible for them to find an opponent. Even Noah, without using another cosmology, could only match up to one of Orpheus and Lilith at full strength. It was still unknown whether he could defeat them. With Orpheus and Lilith as his guards, there was absolutely no problem for Mugung. Of course, these 2 dragon gods were too naive, and no one knew if they would suddenly be deceived, leading to some mistakes. Therefore, it was undoubtedly a good thing to have Rintaro and Yinju accompanying him. As for the Holy Son of Heaven's side, although Aster and Athena's strength was far inferior to Orpheus and Lilith, they were more secure in terms of safety. No matter what, Athena was once the goddess of wisdom. In terms of strategy, Athena was truly the strongest in the world, right? Therefore, compared to Muging's side, the Holy Son of Heaven's guards were weaker, but they had no flaws. Even if they were not as good as Orpheus and Lilith, Aster and Athena were still not ordinary. As long as Noah did not interrupt the supply of divine power, Aster and Athena would be able to display power comparable to that of a god. That level of power was also invincible in this world. Since they were all invincible, it did not matter if there was a difference in combat power, since they were all allies. Under such circumstances, in the next 2 days, Mugging and the Holy Son of Heaven were still preparing for the international conference. Noah, on the other hand, pushed all the preparations to mugging, and even pushed Tina, who was the initiator, to be the holy son of heaven's guard. He himself wandered around the streets every day, and his idleness made people speechless. At least some people hated this to the core. In a dim war room, bodyguard Juarun, who was covered in a black robe and only had his hood removed to reveal a mechanical head, looked at Noah, who was wandering around on the surveillance screen, playing on one street after another. He clenched his fists tightly. Bang! At a certain moment, the bodyguard finally couldn't hold it in anymore. He smashed the instrument next to him with a punch and roared out loud. Why? Why won't you let me go out and kill that bastard? Isn't this a great opportunity? From the monitor, it was very clear that Noah did not bring any guards with him at all. For the past 2 days he had been loafing around alone, wandering around. Just like what the bodyguard said, if they wanted to assassinate Noah, this was definitely a great opportunity. However, this great opportunity had started 2 days ago, and it had not been interrupted for the past 2 days. What did this mean? Did it mean that Noah's sense of danger was so low that he did not even realize the situation he was in? Of course not. This guy, he's looking down on us. The bodyguard was furious. He's obviously telling us that even if he doesn't bring any guards with him, we can't do anything to him. Isn't that right? The bodyguard's furious roar echoed throughout the war room. In this war room, other than the bodyguard, there were 3 other people. One was Li Ching-yin. This mechanical soldier who killed without blinking was now leaning against the wall at the side, looking at the surveillance screen, thinking about something. The other was Leech Benet Jr. This cursed child who also killed without blinking was hugging his sword and hiding in the corner. His pair of eyes maintained the scarlet color of his ability fully activated, and he was mumbling, Tina, Tina, Tina. It was quite clear that Benet the Leech was still brooding over his loss to Tina the last time. After all, the opponent was a sniper with godly skills who was not good at close combat, and he, who had the mantis factor, could be said to be invincible in close combat. In the end, he lost to a sniper in close combat, and it was a clean loss. One could imagine how Benet the Leech was feeling. As for the third person, he was like the bodyguard, covered in a black robe, and even his face was hidden under the hood. The black-robed person's body, from the appearance, could only be vaguely seen from the face that it was a male. However, this black-robed person was sitting in front of the surveillance screen, looking at Noah who was strolling back and forth on the street, holding a barbecue skewer in one hand and a cold drink in the other, very happily strolling around the street. One of his hands was constantly knocking on the table. Looking carefully, on the wrist of the hand that the black-robed person was knocking on the table, there was a tattoo. A pentagram tattoo decorated with feathers. Without a doubt, that was the proof of a member of the Five Xiong Association. However, different from the terrorist leader who launched the attack a few nights ago, the tattoo on the wrist of this black-robed person was not decorated with 2 feathers, but 5 feathers. That was the proof of a top operative of the Five Xiong Association. This black-robed person was one of the top operatives of the Five Xiong Association. Looking at this top operative of the Five Xiong Association, the bodyguard couldn't help but shout, "Sir, don't tell me you're just going to watch that bastard arrogantly walk around in front of our eyes." Hearing this, the black-robed person who was called Sir by the bodyguard raised his head. The corner of his mouth carried a trace of sarcasm. "He is indeed very arrogant," Sir said indifferently. "He didn't bring any guards, and he didn't have a trace of defense. As our target, he is walking around in the street at this critical moment. This is either like what you said, he doesn't see us as a threat, or he is purposely leading us out. There is no third possibility. Maybe it's both." Li Chingyin laughed in a low voice. "Sir, aren't you worried about falling into that man's trap, so you can't make up your mind to assassinate him?" "Trap?" the bodyguard said disdainfully. "Isn't it just a monster leader? What kind of trap can he play?" Hearing the bodyguard's words, Li Chingyin didn't say anything, but he didn't even want to look at the bodyguard. Li Chingyin really felt that the bodyguard was laughable. Undoubtedly, he had fallen into someone else's hands, and even lost his life. In the end, he still maintained this high and mighty attitude. It was really stupid. Li Qingyin didn't even understand why Professor Grunewald would save such a useless guy, and even give him the ability to create mechanical soldiers. If it wasn't for the fact that this guy still had some use, Li Qingyin would have definitely killed him without any mercy. On the other hand, Sir didn't seem to care about the bodyguard's stupidity at all. His tone was still calm. I didn't assassinate him not only because I was worried about falling into his trap, but also because I was waiting for everything to be ready. Oh, Li Qingyin was interested. You're finally going to be serious? That's right. Sir smiled coldly. When everything is ready, we'll tell them that the attack a few days ago was just a game. We'll tell them what the true strength of the Five Xiang Association is. We'll let this so-called fairy tale have a good look. As he said this, he turned his head and looked at Li Qingyin and Zhuoren Baowei. You two follow the plan. Don't make any mistakes. If anyone dares to act without permission, I don't need to tell you what will happen, right? This sentence didn't cause any reaction from Li Qingyin. He only laughed a few times in disdain. The bodyguard's body trembled, and there was some unwillingness in his eyes. If it wasn't for Sir's warning, the bodyguard wouldn't have been able to resist looking for Noah, right? Now the bodyguard could only give up on this idea. As for Li Qingyin, to him, as long as he could fulfill his wish, it didn't matter. What wish? To destroy the world. I can smell the scent of war, how delightful. Chapter 21-21. He didn't come out? On the street leading to the holy residence, Noah was still nibbling on barbecued meat skewers and drinking cold drinks like a loafer. However, he was muttering to himself in a voice that no one else could hear. Well, I was just trying to see if I could lure out Zhuoren, that useless idiot. It seems that there should be someone by that idiot's side who can restrain him. It had to be said that after returning to this world, Noah's thinking ability that had grown from all kinds of conspiracies and machinations that he had trained here was fully operational. Just like what Li Qingyin had said, Noah was wandering the streets leisurely for two reasons. Firstly, he wanted to see if he could lure out the rats that were scurrying in the dark. Secondly, he didn't think that he would encounter any danger even if he was alone. In any case, Wood and Xiaoshi were preparing for the international conference. In terms of safety, Aster, Athena, Orpheus, and Lilith were there to ensure their safety. Noah could totally be a hands-off boss and do other things. Of course, Noah didn't think that such an obvious temptation, a mysterious organization with the goal of dominating the world, would be fooled. Otherwise, the other party was just a small character that wasn't worth mentioning. It wasn't worth Noah's effort. The reason why he carried out such a temptation with such an idea was just to hang Zhuoren, that useless idiot. Even if the Wuxiang Association did have some ability, Noah didn't think that it would change anything for the idiot Zhuoren. If the other party was really spying on him in the dark, then Noah's arrogant stroll on the street, Zhuoren would definitely run out with blood rushing to his head. And since that idiot didn't run out, it proved that there was indeed a big character by his side who was restraining him. Could it be the top operatives of the Wuxiang Association? Noah took a bite of the skewer, but his face had a confident smile that made the hearts of several female high school students palpitate. It would be good if it was. Because in this way, Noah could be sure that the leader of the mysterious organization that planned to go against the fairy tale was in the Tokyo area. Since you're here, don't leave. Muttering to himself, Noah leisurely finished the kebab in his hand and drank the cold drink. He clapped his hands and walked in the direction of the holy residence. Tomorrow the international conference would resume. Since the bodyguard didn't jump out, he probably wouldn't be fooled again. There was no point in continuing to wander around here. Thus, Noah did not linger on the street any longer, and went straight back to the holy residence. The attack a few days ago had raised the security of the holy residence to a whole new level. There were guards patrolling and standing guard everywhere. The guards obviously knew Noah. When Noah came over, they didn't check or interrogate him. They acted as if they didn't see him and let him pass. The Elysian Sun had already given the order that Noah could move freely in the Elysian abode. Therefore, Noah skipped all the inspection steps and went straight to the Elysian Prince's room. Then Noah saw it. Outside the Elysian Prince's room, Aster and Athena were standing guard. Seeing this, Noah was a little surprised and curious as he walked over. Master. Aster noticed Noah and immediately looked over with her purple eyes. You're here? Athena also looked over and seemed a little bored. The scene of two expressionless young girls standing guard in front of the door really gave people a kind of feeling that they couldn't help but laugh. I didn't expect you to be standing guard outside the room. Noah found it funny as he walked up. I thought you guys would be following the target of your protection. I'm carrying out the task Master gave me, Aster immediately clarified. But this sword spirit won't let me in. Oh. Noah blinked and looked at Athena. Why? There should be a limit to personal guards. Athena glanced at Noah. Even if I followed this sword spirit in, it would only cause the target to feel repulsed, right? That couldn't be said to be wrong. No matter what, even if it was a 24-hour personal guard, if they followed the target closely even when they were sleeping or going to the toilet, it would only cause the target to be unable to breathe. The loss outweighed the gain. Athena's consideration was indeed very comprehensive. She even thought of this point. However, Athena obviously didn't have any self-awareness. Although this goddess of wisdom was smart, she didn't think that for a young girl, if there were two cute little girls following her all the time, even if they slept on the same bed, she wouldn't feel repulsed at all, right? However, no matter what, the Elysian prince was the ruler of a country. If outsiders knew that the Elysian prince had to hug his guards to sleep before he could fall asleep, it would be too outrageous. Therefore, it wasn't a bad choice for Aster and Athena to stand guard outside the door. However, Noah, who had never seen the two girls like this, couldn't help but laugh. This made Athena frown slightly. She stared at Noah with her coquettish snake eyes and said, I feel like you're thinking about something very rude. Although it's just my intuition. A god's intuition shouldn't be wrong. Something rude. Aster looked at Noah with pure and innocent eyes and said, Master, are you thinking about H? You're still the same as before. Undoubtedly, you don't know anything, but you always say shocking things. Noah was speechless. Forget it, you two continue to stand guard. With that, Noah pushed open the door and walked in under Aster's confused and displeased gaze. Kacha. Following the soft sound of the door closing, a quiet room appeared in front of Noah. The person Noah was looking for was naturally in this room. However, the other party didn't notice Noah's arrival. In front of the desk, Elysian Emperor was sitting with his back facing the door. He had a pen in his hand and was writing something very seriously. Seeing this, Noah deliberately slowed down his footsteps and walked behind Elysian Emperor. Only then did he realize that Elysian Emperor was not doing anything else but arranging the procedures for tomorrow's international conference. Seeing Elysian Emperor repeatedly writing down the procedures of the conference, Noah couldn't help but let out a bitter laugh. The Elysian son was startled. He turned his head and saw Noah. His eyes lit up as he exclaimed in surprise and joy, Why are you here? Now the sky was almost dark. Noah didn't live in the celestial abode. Although they were allies, the holy abode, as the residence of the ruler of the Tokyo area, had become a symbolic residence, just like the presidential palace. If Fairy Tale directly moved in and spread any rumors, it would not be good for the holy abode. Therefore Noah, Mugen, Hina, Xiaoshi, Yenju, and Rintaro all lived in the International Hotel, not in the celestial abode. In the past 2 days, in order to prepare for the international conference, Elysian Emperor was almost busy, and Noah was strolling on the street to see if he could provoke the bodyguard. Naturally, they didn't meet. Looking at Elysian Emperor's happy and surprised expression, Noah somewhat playfully smiled. What? Could it be that I can't come? Then I'll go? With that said, Noah really turned around and prepared to walk in the direction of the door. Elysian Emperor was anxious. Immediately, Elysian Emperor quickly stood up and grabbed Noah's clothes. The corner of Noah's mouth lifted slightly, turned his head, and looked at Elysian Emperor. Under Noah's gaze, Elysian Emperor lowered his head shyly and said softly, I'm very happy that you can come. This sentence, if it wasn't for Noah's enhanced hearing, he might not have heard it. So Noah smiled. Okay, I'm just teasing you. Noah laughed and pinched Elysian Emperor's little nose, then sat down on Elysian Emperor's seat, took the girl's hand and directly pulled. Elysian Emperor let out a little exclamation. And then her body was pulled into Noah's arms and directly sat on his lap. Only lovers were allowed to be close to each other, making Elysian Emperor, who had never been so close to any opposite sex, blushed. Of course, Elysian Emperor didn't know that when she, who was originally as holy as a goddess, acted like a young girl, it was even more attractive. Chapter 21-22. Looking at the holy ruler of the Tokyo region showing a shy expression, Noah's heart was hot. He wanted to hold back, but he reacted. Why should I hold back? I don't hold back for others. Why should I hold back for a lover who has already confirmed their relationship? With this in mind, Noah simply kissed the delicate face of the girl in his arms. Ah! Shengzi suddenly exclaimed again, and the shyness in her eyes turned into shame and anger. She glared at Noah with a red face and protested aloud. I'm working. Yes, I know that our Lord Shengzi loves work the most. Noah smiled indifferently, picked up the meeting process that had been simulated several times on the table, and sighed. However, our Lord Shengzi doesn't seem to know that her work is completely redundant. No matter how much memorization is required, there is no need to simulate the meeting process so many times, right? Although the meeting was proposed by the countries of the world, since the location was chosen in the Tokyo region, the process of the meeting naturally had to be drawn up by the ruler of the Tokyo region. However, the process of the meeting simulated by Shengzi was already so detailed that it couldn't be more detailed, but this girl had been simulating it over and over again. It was really a bit clumsy. No matter what, even if the location is chosen in the Tokyo region, the meeting is still proposed by the countries of the world. No matter how detailed your simulation is, if you don't get to the point, then it's just useless work. Noah raised the draft in his hand and said to Shengzi, this time, the countries of the world are obviously here for the fairy tale, but you didn't mention a single word about this during the entire meeting. Do you think the countries of the world will continue to follow your ideas? Hearing this, the blush on Shengzi's pretty face slowly faded, and she sighed consciously. I also know that this is just useless work, but if possible, I really don't want to see the only remaining human countries in the world still fighting for the so-called hegemony at this juncture. Compared with before the emergence of gastronomes, today's human beings could almost be said to be struggling at death's door. Even the tiny island nation of Japan had lost most of its land due to the threat of the protozoa. The remaining humans were divided into 5 regions and survived by relying on the giant stone tablet. It was not hard to imagine that the other large countries would suffer even greater disasters. Under such circumstances, humans should work hand in hand to deal with the protozoa that threatened the survival of the entire human race. However, humans had completely failed to grasp the instinct that even protogut animals would not kill each other. Even in this situation, they were still fighting against each other. This made the Holy Son of Heaven feel sad. You're just too kind. Noah naturally knew what kind of person his little girlfriend was. His tone couldn't help but soften. However, it's not a good thing to be too soft-hearted. Sometimes, you have to be decisive when it's time to be decisive. You're the ruler of the Tokyo region. You should understand this, right? I know what you want to say. The Elysian prince fell silent for a moment before looking at Noah. I'm just worried that the worst will happen tomorrow. Under the gaze of the Elysian Son of Heaven, Noah also fell silent. After a while, Noah spoke faintly. Are you referring to the war? The Elysian Son of Heaven nodded solemnly. The reason why all the countries in the world targeted Fairy Tale was because Fairy Tale had taken in the cursed children of all the countries in the world and obtained an extremely powerful strength. It even had the ability to compete for the hegemony of the world and threaten all the countries. In this case, at tomorrow's international conference, it was already obvious which aspect the countries around the world would target. In order to weaken the power of Fairy Tale, and to take back the weapons that used to belong to their countries, the countries around the world will definitely raise the issue of the cursed children's whereabouts. The Elysian Son of Heaven said worriedly. As the main culprit behind the illegal abduction of citizens from various countries, every country in the world would definitely condemn your guild with righteous words tomorrow, and demand the return of their cursed children. It would not be impossible for them to demand compensation from fairyland. This was the so-called politics. Even if fairy tale took in children from all over the world for the sake of the cursed children's future, taking away the people of a country without permission was indeed a violation of the law. No matter how much the countries around the world hated the cursed children, they could still use this as an excuse and stand on the side of justice. Just like what the Elysian Son of Heaven said, they would condemn fairy tale and demand compensation. And if fairy tale doesn't accept, the countries around the world will definitely use the excuse of seeking justice as an excuse to declare war on fairyland. The Elysian Son of Heaven looked straight at Noah. When that time comes, what will you do? What would Noah do? Under the Elysian Son of Heaven's gaze that seemed to want to see through his heart, Noah spoke indifferently. Don't you already know the answer? Hearing this, the Elysian Son of Heaven could not help but show a worried expression. That's right. The Elysian Son of Heaven already knew the answer. Because just 3 years ago, Noah made a choice. On one side, it was the hopeless humans. On the other side, it was the innocent children. Which side would he stand on? Based on the Elysian Son of Heaven's understanding of his sweetheart, no matter how he thought about it, there was only one answer. And this answer was not only the answer that Noah would give, but also the answer that everyone in fairyland would give. We, fairy tale, will only fight for our family and companions, Noah said without hesitation. If someone wants to harm our family and companions, then the entire fairyland will not be afraid of any challenge or battle. That's right. This answer was already deeply ingrained in the hearts of the people of fairyland, and even other regions and countries. And there would not be any wavering. But the countries around the world will definitely not let this go. The Elysian Son of Heaven smiled bitterly. In the end, tomorrow's international conference will definitely develop into the prelude to war. It was because of this that the Elysian Son of Heaven had been doing useless things, simulating the conference process over and over again in an attempt to prevent the conference from going down the wrong path. For the Elysian Son of Heaven who yearned for peace, war was the only thing that must be avoided. Once a war breaks out, innocent people will definitely be implicated. Some countries will even be destroyed by primitive animals, because their precious metals will be taken away by the victorious country after losing the war. This time, the severity of the situation is even worse. Once a war breaks out, it will be a real-world war. The Elysian Son of Heaven bit his lip as he stared at Noah. Is there really no way to avoid war? Under the Elysian Son of Heaven's helpless and hopeful gaze, Noah shut his mouth. Seeing this, the Elysian Son of Heaven's eyes brightened as he quickly spoke. You have a way to avoid war, right? Who was this man before him? When he was still the president of a small civilian organization, he was able to fight a battle of wits and courage with the celestial minister of Chrysanthemum, not falling into a disadvantageous position, and even ousted him from his position. Even the dictatorial Chiwu Xuanzong couldn't do anything to this man. And because of the development plan he left behind 3 years ago, all the countries in the world ended up being controlled by others. If there was anyone who could find a way to avoid war, the Elysian Son of Heaven believed that it was definitely the man in front of him. The key was whether Noah was willing or not. After all, Noah wouldn't show the slightest bit of mercy to those who intended to hurt the people around him. Thinking of this, the Holy Son of Heaven shyly wrapped his arms around Noah's neck and asked in a coquettish manner, I know that you hate those selfish people, but the commoners are innocent. For the sake of those innocent commoners, please help me. Under the Elysian Son of Heaven's pleading tone, Noah finally smiled bitterly. Immediately, Noah stared at the Elysian Son of Heaven. It's my bad luck to have a loyal head of state like you. The Elysian Son of Heaven smiled happily. Chapter 21-23. The next day, early in the morning, on the roads leading to the center of Tokyo District 1, luxury cars came from all directions like a procession, gradually rushing to a huge clubhouse. It was a clubhouse in the middle of a road, located in a vast square, shaped like a giant egg. In front of the clubhouse was a courtyard. In the center of the courtyard was a gorgeous fountain. Logically speaking, most of the Earth's land is now occupied by protozoa, and the population is facing a shortage of living places. It is not a wise decision to make such a vast piece of land so luxurious, and it seems that no one usually lives in it. However, no matter where, the facade is a very important thing. If it is really necessary to be extravagant and wasteful, then it can't be saved. This clubhouse in front of him belongs to the ranks of necessary extravagance and wastefulness. Because this clubhouse is the embassy of the Tokyo region. As a permanent diplomatic representative office of a country, the embassy represents the interests of the entire country and is fully responsible for the communication and exchange between the country and foreign countries. Of course, as the most important building of a country, the embassy can't be too shabby no matter what. The embassy in District 1, which is located in the center of Tokyo, is mainly used as a venue for communication between the Tokyo area and the remaining 4 areas of Japan that were left after the collapse of the past. But today this clubhouse is open to the whole world, welcoming representatives from all over the world. Luxurious limousines were parked around the square one after another. Under the protection of a group of guards, the representatives of the various countries moved towards the embassy one by one with a serious expression on their faces. At the entrance of the embassy, the Tokyo region's dignitaries in charge of reception stepped forward one by one, bowed to the representatives from all over the world, exchanged greetings, and then led the representatives from all over the world into the embassy. For a while, the entire embassy seemed to be unusually lively, and around the embassy the security was also extremely tight. Not only the large team of police officers, but they also drove police cars and patrolled everywhere. Even the self-defense forces, which are usually stationed at the border of the country, sent a lot of personnel, holding heavy machine guns and large weapons, standing guard in various places. A rigorous and solemn atmosphere pervaded the entire embassy. Under such circumstances, the protagonists finally arrived late. Several limousines slowly drove into the plaza of the embassy and stopped directly in front of the red carpet that extended from the main entrance. They then opened the doors and alighted. The first to descend was the Holy Son of Heaven. Under the protection of the guards of the holy residence, the Holy Son of Heaven, dressed in a white suit, got off the car. However, he did not walk to the red carpet. Instead, he stood in place and waited. After Sheng Tianzi's car left, another car stopped in front of Sheng Tianzi. There were 3 people who got off the bus. One was Heaven's Child Mugung. One was Rintaro Rikami. The last one was naturally Noah. After getting off the car, Noah raised his head and looked at the embassy in front of him. Magino and Rintaro came to Noah's left and right respectively. Like followers, they announced who the owner of the fairy tale was. They also looked at the huge hall in front of them with serious expressions. Because for the fairy tale, the embassy in front of them was likely to become a battlefield made purely of words today. If they were not careful, it was very likely that from today onwards, Fairyland would become the public enemy of the world. The people inside will all become our enemies later, right? Magino said in a low voice. To be valued and viewed as enemies by all the countries in the world. I don't know whether to laugh or cry. At the very least, we hope to be able to come out smiling, while others will definitely want to see us come out crying. Ryutaru tugged at his tie. His tone inevitably became a little rough. The only thing I can be sure of is that after the meeting, I will definitely hate a lot of people. Someone you hate. Noah curled his lips, but smiled faintly. I think, after the meeting, there will definitely be a lot of people who will hate us. Hearing this, Magino and Rintaro both laughed bitterly. However, Noah's relaxed attitude made the two of them feel more at ease. Although there were many things that they should be worried about, since this person who had once established the entire fairy tale as the hope of a new era and protected a group of children from the dark side of human beings was here, then the problem in front of them should be easily solved, right? Magino and Rintaro believed so. At this time, Elysium slowly walked over and stopped in front of the 3 people. As soon as he came up, Elysium noticed something and asked in surprise. Where are Miss Hina, Miss Natsuki and Miss Yenju? Yes. Only Noah, Magino, and Rintaro came down from the car. The 3 people who started them were nowhere to be seen. Not only that, but Orpheus and Lilith were also not here. Even Aster and Athena, who were originally sent to protect Elysium, suddenly disappeared when Elysium woke up in the morning. In response, Magino and Rintaro shook their heads at the same time. We don't know either. They were gone when we woke up in the morning. Noah only told us not to worry, but did not tell us the details. Elysium turned his gaze to Noah when he heard Magino and Rintaro's words. His eyes were full of questions. Seeing this, Noah smiled and said, "Those children have another mission and have returned to Fairyland." Returned to Fairyland? Both Magino and Rintaro were surprised. Then doesn't that mean? Elysium was even more surprised. You don't even have a guard by your side now? This was not a joke. One must know that now, every country in the world saw Fairy Tail as a thorn in their side. In order to eliminate the threat of Fairy Tail, they were always thinking of getting rid of the leader of Fairy Tail. Under such circumstances, it would be foolish of him not to bring a single guard with him. Seeing the worry in Elysium's eyes, Noah pretended to be relaxed as if he wanted to reassure the overly kind leader of the country. What do you mean no guards? Don't we still have Magino and Rintaro? Hearing this, Magino and Rintaro's bitter smile deepened. Although I'm confident in my own strength, I can't guarantee that I'm better than Hina and Yinju. Magino sighed. Moreover, undoubtedly, I'm the acting leader, and now you want me to be a guard? Well, I did come here with the intention of becoming a guard, Ryutaru said in a puzzled tone. But without the initiator by your side, isn't it a little too dangerous? Maybe, Noah said to Rintaro in a mocking tone. So you'll have to work harder, Mr. Partner of Justice. Hearing this, Elysium and Magino both paused for a moment, then laughed. The confusion on Rintaro's face instantly turned into annoyance. You guys always bring up what happened 3 years ago. Don't you get tired of it? 3 years ago, in order to get Noah to save the entire Tokyo area, Rintaro stood up for justice and fought with Noah. After that, Rintaro was always ridiculed by the guild members as the partner of justice. Even the International Initiator Monitoring Committee considered whether they should give Rintaro the nickname Partner of Justice, which made Rintaro break down several times. Who told you to be in the limelight at that time? Noah couldn't help but laugh. Just accept your fate. Ryutaru could only glare at Noah with resentment in his eyes. Everyone couldn't help but laugh when they saw this. All right, everyone. Elysium put away the smile on his face and became serious. It's time to go in. Noah nodded nonchalantly, and then led Magino and Rintaro toward the embassy under Elysium's guidance. The heavily guarded embassy was like the calm before the storm, exuding a solemn atmosphere. Chapter 21-24. Because representatives from all over the world will be attending this conference, and this world is just an ordinary world, unlike the Demon High School, where they can teleport to their destination with a magic circle. Therefore, the time of the conference is set at noon. After the representatives from all over the world arrived at the embassy, they will be arranged to rest in their own rooms. After lunch, they will gather in the conference room and start the conference. Therefore, Noah and the others actually came early. However, it is necessary to come early. If the conference starts right away, then many things will not be prepared. Whether it is for their own people or for outsiders, this is the case. It was precisely because of this that many representatives from various countries had arrived in advance and started making preparations. Of course, these preparations, as for what, only the people involved know. And as the host, Shengzi has a lot of preparations. From welcoming the guests to settling them down. From settling them down to taking care of them. From taking care of them to greeting them. From greeting them to probing them. And so on and so forth. Similar preparations need to be done by Shengzi. Among them, the most important one is safety. After all, representatives from all over the world are gathered here. If something happens to one of them in the Tokyo area, then the country that the representative is from will definitely ask the Tokyo area to bear extraordinary blame and punishment. Therefore, the safety of the representatives is definitely the most important thing during this international conference. Although I don't know if terrorists will suddenly attack the embassy and cause harm to the important representatives in the embassy, but just in case, I have gathered all the police and self-defense forces here. Shungzi said to Noah as they walked in the corridor of the embassy. In addition to the various miscellaneous arrangements during the conference, many senior officials in the Tokyo area have been transferred here to help. Now let me introduce you to the people in charge of these tasks. Shungzi said as he brought Noah, Mugung, and Rintaro to a lounge. A guard stepped forward and opened the door of the lounge, allowing everyone to see the scene inside. Immediately Noah, Mugung, and Rintaro all saw it. In the resting room, there were 3 people talking. The group that was talking was a group of 2 men and a woman. The 2 men gave off a completely different feeling. One was a tall young man wearing a suit and glasses, giving off a shrewd feeling. The other was a middle-aged man wearing a military uniform and a military cap, giving off a strong and experienced feeling. The only woman in the room was a young girl, wearing a kimono, holding an iron fan, a beautiful young girl with a beauty mark under the corner of her eye. Looking at the 2 men and 1 woman talking, Noah, Mugung, and Rintaro's attention was instantly taken away by the young girl. Of course, it was not that Noah and Rintaro only had beautiful women in their eyes, nor was it that Mugung had any special fetishes. The reason why they were attracted to the girl in kimono was because she was someone they were familiar. Thus Noah, Mugung, and Rintaro were all shocked. Wait, the girl in the kimono was the daughter of the president of the world's largest weapons company, Sima Heavy Industries, Sima Weiji. She had once helped Noah and Rintaro a lot, and was also at loggerheads with Mogensha. Wei Sima turned her head and looked at the door. Then her eyes lit up, and she stood up with a smile. Everyone, long time no see. Hearing this, Noya and Ryutaru looked at each other, both feeling somewhat relieved. Obviously, both of them knew why Wei Sima was here. Undoubtedly, as the acting president of Fairy Tail, Mugung was usually very smart and capable. But at this time, blood rushed to his head and he stared at Wei Sima without thinking. Why are you here? Oh. Wei Sima pretended to be surprised as if she didn't notice Mugung's existence until now. So you're here too, Mugung? I understand. Mugung smiled. His smile was very bright. You're here to cause trouble, right? With that said, Mugung did not hesitate to reach for the blade on his waist, as if he wanted to pull it out. Seeing this, Noah and Rintaro were shocked. Although they knew the relationship between Mugung and Wei Sima was extremely bad, this girl didn't know how much trouble she would cause if she pulled the sword out in this situation. Immediately, Noah knocked on Mugung's head, causing her to cry out in pain. Mugung held her head and stared at Noah with tears in her eyes. Noah didn't even bother with her. He pressed down on her head and restrained her. Then he looked at Wei Ji and laughed bitterly. Miss Sima, please don't provoke my girl here, okay? I didn't provoke Mugung. Wei Sima was still smiling, but her words were like this. For the president of a private company who was once a poor ghost who couldn't even afford a bowl of eel rice, as the current president of Sima Heavy Industries, how could I do such a tasteless thing as stimulating inferior people? Wasn't this an obvious provocation? Ha ha. Mugung's smile twitched as she stiffly turned her head and looked at Noah. Noah, this is my lifetime request. Let me kill this snake girl, okay? Hearing this, Noah didn't have time to react before Wei Sima spoke. Aya, how scary. Wei Sima pretended to shout. Little Noah, you have to protect me, okay? Saying this, Wei Sima directly went to Noah's side and hugged his arm. Mugung's face twitched when she saw this. Ryutaru, on the other hand, seemed to have foreseen what was about to happen. He turned his head away as if he couldn't bear to watch, only to be shocked again. Because in Rintaro's line of sight, the sage son of heaven was standing there, staring at Wei Sima who was hugging Noah's arm. The expression on his face completely faded. Rintaro had to swear that this was the first time he saw the kind and peace-loving sage son of heaven show such an expression. Not to mention Rintaro, even Noah, who had seen many of the sage's girlish side in private, had never seen such an expression before. He immediately felt a chill run down his spine. However, before Noah could push Wei Sima away, Mugung fiercely hugged Noah's other arm. Noah almost screamed. It couldn't be helped. Due to using too much strength, Mugung's voluptuous upper body was directly pressed against Noah's arm. The overly soft and comfortable feeling made Noah's heart skip a beat. However, Mugging didn't notice this at all. She hugged Noah tightly and glared at Wei Sima. "Let go of me, snake girl," Mugging shouted. "Do you think someone like you can hug the guild leader of Fairy Tale? With my relationship with little Noah, what's a hug?" Not only did Wei Sima not let go, she hugged even harder. Facing the angry Mugging, she revealed a fake smile that didn't have a trace of a smile. "A woman like you who relied on little Noah's favor to climb to your current position should stay away from little Noah. Obediently go back to being the leader of a poor company that can't even afford eel rice." "Yes, I did rely on Noah's favor to become the acting leader of Fairy Tale." Mugging didn't want to be outdone. "Then what about you? Don't tell me you didn't rely on your Sima clan to climb to your current position? Ho ho. You want to use your family background to erase my, Wei Sima's, efforts?" Wei Sima's smile became more and more fake. "However, this is the only way you can find a sense of superiority from me. I forgive you, Mugging." Veins popped out on Mugging's forehead. Wei Sima's smile also began to twitch. The two stared at each other like this. Sparks seemed to come out from the friction of their gazes, making the surrounding atmosphere more and more dangerous. And Noah, who was tragically reduced to being sandwiched between the two girls, felt his hand being hugged tighter and tighter. Although it could be said to be wonderful in any situation, the gaze from the Holy Son of Heaven made Noah feel like he was sitting on pins and needles. At this moment, Noah felt a sharp gaze on his body. Chapter 21-25. When that sharp gaze was directed at Noah, Noah was stunned. Because Noah, with his superior perceptive ability, could clearly feel that in that sharp gaze, there was a chilling negative emotion. That kind of negative emotion was the same as the hatred of Noah's bodyguard, or even worse. Immediately, when Noah was stunned, that gaze suddenly disappeared. Noah suddenly frowned, raised his head, and looked forward. There, the two men who were talking to Wei Weaver were both looking at Noah. However, the two's expressions were completely different. The young man in the suit had a smile on his face, and gave Noah a refreshing expression. The middle-aged man in the military uniform had a straight face. He looked at Noah as if he was looking at a playboy. Even if he didn't show any disgust, the displeasure in his eyes was quite obvious. Under such circumstances, Noah narrowed his eyes and looked at Sheng Tianzi. "Sheng Tianzi, can I trouble you to introduce them to me?" That one sentence completely washed away the comical atmosphere around them. Mugging and Wei Weaver realized what kind of situation they were in, and quickly let go of Noah's hand. Sheng Tianzi coughed, stepped forward, and said to Noah, Mugging, and Rintaro, "Let me introduce them to you." Then Sheng Tianzi looked at the middle-aged man in the military uniform. "This is the Supreme Commander of the Tokyo Self-Defense Forces. He is responsible for leading the self-defense forces. This time, he is in charge of the posts and patrols around the embassy." "I am Soma Muneshi," the middle-aged commander said in a sarcastic tone. "Thanks to Sheng Tianzi's kindness, I am the commander of the self-defense forces. I have heard of your names a long time ago. It's really an eye-opener for me to see you here with a playful attitude." Needless to say, who Soma Muneshi was referring to. At that moment, both Mugging and Wei Weaver showed a somewhat awkward expression. They couldn't help but look at each other. Then they snorted and turned their heads away. The hatred between the two of them was indeed unusually high. Seeing that the atmosphere had become dangerous, Elysian Son of Heaven seemed to want to smooth things over, and introduced another person. "This is the police of the Tokyo Metropolitan Police Department. He is responsible for leading the relevant personnel of the police department to protect the safety of the representatives." "Hello." The young man in the suit smiled politely at everyone. "I am Toshiro, please take care of me." That candid performance gave everyone a good impression. Compared to Xiang Ma Zongxiang, his attitude was like heaven and earth. Looking at the young man who called himself Toshiro, Mugging and Rintaro both seemed to have thought of something important, and stood up in surprise. "Mugging-san." Rintaro looked at Mugging in surprise. "This person can't be you." Mugging also looked at Cupboard Tuolong with surprise and uncertainty, and asked with great uncertainty, "Is it really you, Mr. Toshiro? You finally remembered me?" Cupboard Toshiro smiled happily. I thought Tomato-san had forgotten about me. How could that be? Mugging quickly shook her head and smiled apologetically. Sorry, it's just that I haven't seen you for a long time, so I didn't think of you. That's good. Toshiro was relieved. I thought Tomato-san had really forgotten about me. Then I would be very sad. You must be joking. Mugging showed a rare embarrassed expression. Seeing Mugging like this, Rintaro's expression became a little unhappy. Noah's heart skipped a beat. It seems that Mugging and Rintaro both know this police officer called Toshiro. With this thought in mind, Noah didn't ask Mugging and Rintaro anything on the spot. Instead, he nodded to Soma Muneshi and Toshiro. I'm Noah Doria. I was a little rude just now, please don't take it to heart. Humph. Soma Muneshi snorted and didn't say anything. How could that be? Toshiro responded to Noah in a friendly manner. Tomato-san and Tomato-san's relationship has been so good since young. And you haven't seen each other for so long. You must miss each other very much, right? Who has a good relationship with this guy? Mugging and Unweaver didn't hesitate to speak at the same time. Then they glared at each other and shouted at the same time. Don't copy me. Watching this scene, Ryotaro began to sweat. Even Toshiro of the cabinet could only smile wryly. Soma Muneshi seemed to have had enough and shouted angrily. Enough. If you think this is a place to hold a party, then go back. Xiangma Zongxiong's roar gave everyone a fright. Even Noah narrowed his eyes and looked directly at Soma Muneshi. Commander Soma. Seiko looked at Soma Muneshi in shock. What are you doing? Lord Seiko, forgive me for not being able to recognize this group of brats. Soma Muneshi said coldly. This is a serious international meeting place, and now that representatives from all over the world are gathered here, it is no doubt an honor for our Tokyo region. But this group of brats is fooling around in such a serious place, I really can't stand it anymore. You. Mugging and Unweaver's face suddenly became a little ugly. Admittedly, in such an occasion, Mugging and Unweaver's quarrel was a bit ridiculous. But Soma Muneshi's words were too harsh, right? Seiko frowned, and when he was about to say something, he was stopped by Noah. Commander Soma, right? Noah looked at Soma Muneshi. I'm sorry, my representative was a bit ridiculous. I apologize on his behalf. Hearing this, Xiangma Zongxiong revealed a mocking expression. Just as he was about to say something, he was interrupted by Noah. However, Commander Soma. Noah said indifferently. I have to give you a warning. Warning? Soma Muneshi's eyes widened, and he was so angry that he laughed. You're warning me? What? Am I not qualified to warn you? Noah looked at Soma Muneshi with a smile. You seem to think that we are the family members of the Holy Son of Heaven. You keep calling us little brats. But I have to remind you that the so-called serious, international conference in your eyes is held for my guild. Have you forgotten? Soma Muneshi opened his mouth, and only then did he suddenly realize. That's right, these people in front of him were not Seiko's subordinates, nor were they residents of Tokyo. In addition to Unweaver, Noah, Mugung, and Rintaro all came from Fairyland, and they were the top management of Fairy Tail. This time, the international conference was held because of Fairy Tail. The group of brats in Soma Muneshi's eyes were not here to observe, but to participate in the meeting as members of the meeting. We were invited to participate in this international meeting. Logically speaking, we are guests, but is this how your country treats guests? Noah said lightly. If that's the case, then I think Fairyland will not participate in this international meeting. As soon as these words came out, other people's reactions aside, Soma Muneshi finally broke out in a cold sweat. If Noah really left, this international meeting would definitely not continue, and they would have to announce the disbandment. Moreover, the world would not be able to denounce Fairyland. Because it was not that Fairyland did not want to participate in the meeting, but if the people of Tokyo neglected a country's representative, causing them to leave in anger, the world's blame would be directed to Tokyo, and not Fairyland. At that time, in Soma Muneshi's eyes, the international meeting that gathered representatives from all over the country, and for Tokyo, would become a scandal in Tokyo. As for him, Soma Muneshi, he would have to admit all the responsibility, and under the condemnation of the world, he would be ousted by the angry Tokyo officials and people, and even become a street rat. Thinking of this, Soma Muneshi's forehead was full of sweat. Noah was right. Because Noah and the others were too close to Seiko, and because they were too young, Soma Muneshi thought of Noah and the others as Seiko's family group, the rising stars of Tokyo, and completely forgot that they were not from Tokyo at all. This was also because Unweaver was in a mess with Noah and the others, so it gave Soma Muneshi this illusion. Now it was too late for regrets. Chapter 21-26. Under Noah's gaze, Soma Munekika squeezed out a voice with much difficulty, but he did not know what to say. This was a real international issue. Although Fairyland was only a new city discovered a year ago, in the eyes of the world, this new force was no different from a new country. Moreover, it was a powerful country with the ability to dominate the world. However, even so, it still could not erase the fact that Fairyland's history was too short. Even the guild that traced the origin of Fairyland, Fairy Tale, was just a civilian organization founded by Noah 4 or 5 years ago. Its history was too short. Therefore, many people would subconsciously ignore the fact that Fairyland was a force that was not weaker than a major country, and instead treated it as a civilian guild. Soma Munekika also made the same mistake. In addition, Noah, Mugung, and Rintaro were all once part of the Tokyo area. As a result, the commander of the self-defense forces subconsciously treated Noah and the others not as guests, but as a group of newcomers in the Tokyo area. Therefore, Soma Munekika put on airs. Unfortunately, he put on airs against the wrong people. Now, the commander of the self-defense forces was undoubtedly in a difficult situation. Under such circumstances, one person stood up. "I'm really sorry, President Noah." Toshiro quickly bowed and apologized to Noah. "Commander Soma, it's just that today's international conference is too important, and there is no room for mistakes, so he was too nervous and caused this discourtesy. Please forgive Commander Soma." With that said, Toshiro even winked at Soma Munekika. Soma Munekika finally reacted, gritted his teeth, and spoke with some reluctance. "I'm sorry I was rude, please don't take it to heart." Mugging and Unwoven's expressions looked a lot better after seeing Soma Munekika apologize. As for Noah, he smiled slightly. "Forget it, although it's a little unpleasant. We did have some discourtesy on our side, so let's just forget about it." Hearing this, Rintaro let out a sigh of relief. Fortunately, Noah was strong enough to not embarrass Mugung and Wei too much. Otherwise, Ryutaru himself would have rushed out first. Mugung and Wei Woven, of course, knew that Noah was helping them vent their anger. They looked at Noah with gratitude. Little did they know that although Noah appeared to be very strong, he was just saying that he would leave. Of course, in this way, Noah could use this excuse to leave directly and not participate in the meeting to avoid being targeted by countries around the world. However, as mentioned before, Tokyo would definitely bear all kinds of responsibilities. At that time, Soma Munhai's downfall would be a small matter. After all, he had spoken rudely, so he deserved it. However, as the ruler of Tokyo, Sei Tianzi would also be criticized. Noah could ignore the accusations he suffered in Tokyo, but he couldn't ignore his lover being accused by others. Therefore, Noah was just saying it to scare Soma Munhai. He wouldn't really leave directly. In this regard, Sei Tianzi himself was the clearest. He smiled at Noah and immediately said to Toshiro and Soma Munhai, "The two of you are leading the Metropolitan Police Department and the Self-Defense Forces respectively. Both of you are responsible for the safety of this international conference. Because of the scale and importance of this international conference, I understand that the two of you must be somewhat nervous, but you must not neglect the foreign representatives because of this, understand?" "Yes." Toshiro and Soma Munhai bowed their heads. "Good." Sei Tianzi nodded. "Then, the two of you can go out and continue with your work." Toshiro and Soma Munhai bowed to everyone one by one, and then left the room. Phew. Only then did everyone heave a sigh of relief as if they had relaxed a little. "Really, what kind of person is that person?" Mugging said rather unhappily. "I didn't offend him. To be precise, we didn't offend him, but he offended us." Weiji raised the iron fan in her hand and covered the lower half of her face and laughed. Although he's the commander of the self-defense forces, he's too arrogant. Shouldn't we teach him a lesson? Don't mess around. Rintaro quickly warned. I know that your Sima family is now a big family in Tokyo, but it's your fault. It's a bit unreasonable to seek revenge. Why would I? Weiji suddenly turned her head. I was just joking. Haha. Like hell I'll believe you. Mugging and Rintaro both cursed in their hearts. However, that Soma Myunhide was indeed a bit arrogant. Letting Weiji teach him a lesson might not be a bad thing. Although Soma Myunhide was the commander of the self-defense forces, Weiji had many ways to deal with him. After all, today's Sima family was different from 3 years ago. They were no longer just a weapons company, they were also deeply involved in politics. Don't forget, 3 years ago, it was because the Sima family replaced the Tentong family's position and took over the Tentong family's position. That's why the Tokyo region didn't fall into a state of political paralysis, and the Tentong family was completely removed. Therefore, today's Sima family was almost equivalent to the Tentong family's position in Tokyo. However, the Tentong family had a Tentong chrysanthemum as an assistant to the Holy Son of Heaven. Their position was more stable and their influence in politics was greater. Although the Sima family didn't have an assistant to the Holy Son of Heaven, the influence of the weapons company in Tokyo was just enough to fill the gap. It was because of this that Weiji appeared here. Toshiro Kanejima was responsible for leading the Metropolitan Police Department's police to protect the safety of the world's representatives. Soma Myunhide was responsible for leading the self-defense forces guards to set up a heavy defense line in the embassy. Weiji was responsible for leading the various senior officials in Tokyo. She was responsible for welcoming guests, taking care of them, preparing meals, and various other chores. In other words, the above 3 people were directly in charge of this international conference and were under the command of the Holy Son of Heaven. The only thing he didn't expect was that Soma Myunhide would suddenly go crazy and even scold Weiji. Perhaps it was because the self-defense forces had a considerable rejection of the police, so Soma Myunhide's attitude towards Noah's group was so bad that he thought Noah's group was a small police company. That's right. Noah looked at Mugging and Rintaro. That Toshiro Kanejima, do you know him? Mugging and Rintaro suddenly became a little hesitant. On the contrary, Weiji gave a mischievous smile and directly stated the reason. Of course I know him. Mugging and Kanejima were originally engaged. Engaged? Noah was stunned. Betrothed? Mugging and Kanejima were engaged? In other words, the two of them were engaged in a relationship? Do you understand? Little Noah. Weiji was like a judge pronouncing a sentence as she closed the iron fan in her hand and pointed at Mugging. Undoubtedly, this person is half a married woman, but she still clings to you and deceives your feelings. Her goal is to become the acting president of Fairy Tale. An unexpected conspiracy theory appeared. Even Seiji and Rintaro were shocked by Weiji's righteous tone, and were stunned. As for Noah, he was even more stunned. What nonsense are you talking about? Mugging completely lost her calm as she frantically explained to Noah. It's not like that. I was only engaged with Kanejima, and it was an engagement set by the Tendo family without permission. I never agreed, and when I left the Tendo family, the engagement was already cancelled. Perhaps because Mugging was too desperate to explain, her face turned red as she screamed. I'm still a virgin. As soon as she said this, the whole room was silent. The Holy Son of Heaven felt as if he had been stabbed by these words. His face turned red. Weiji laughed out loud as if her evil plan had succeeded. Ryutaru, on the other hand, was a little embarrassed, but at the same time, he heaved a sigh of relief. As for Noah, the corner of his mouth kept twitching. After a while, he said with some hesitation, "Okay, you're still a virgin, but that doesn't seem to have anything to do with me." This sentence finally woke Mugging up. Wah! Half a second later, a cry filled with grief and indignation resounded throughout the embassy. Chapter 21-27. In the corner of the lounge, Mugging sat with her head lowered. Her face was covered by her long bangs, but she gave off the feeling of someone who had given up on herself. About that, Ryutaru seemed to be unable to bear it. He cautiously asked Noah, who was beside him. Are you sure you don't want to comfort Mugging-san? How am I supposed to comfort her? Noah said helplessly. Right now, whenever Mugging sees my face, she'll be reminded of the embarrassing incident. If I go over to comfort her, I'll only be adding insult to injury. Then what should we do? Ryutaru asked helplessly. Are we just going to leave her like this? Isn't it better to just leave her be? Wei Weaver said with a smile. It's just a Mugung. Just let her be. I'll get little Noah to pick it up later. What do you mean pick her up? Noah was speechless. Mugging isn't my pet. Is that so? Wei Weaver said in surprise. If Mugging didn't become your pet, how could she have gotten to where she is now? Noah and Ryutaru both laughed dryly. The eldest daughter of the Sema family was indeed a devious person. By the way, don't you have to work? Ryutaru quickly changed the topic. You're in charge of all kinds of chores. There should be a lot of things for you to do, right? The basic work has already been arranged. My remaining job is to deal with any unexpected situations and maintain contact with my subordinates. Wei Weaver said calmly. Originally, I should have accompanied the Holy Son of Heaven to visit the representatives of the various countries and greet them. However, the Holy Son of Heaven asked me to stay behind, and went to greet the representatives by himself. Hence I had nothing to do. Is that okay? Ryutaru frowned. Since they're representatives from all over the world, they're definitely not simple characters. Isn't it too risky for Lord Xingzi to deal with those cunning people alone? Now is just the stage of testing each other. The most important thing is the conference. If we can't even get through this stage, we will be completely dominated by the representatives of the various countries at noon. Noah shrugged. That girl must have had such thoughts. That's why she resolutely went to the representatives' lounge alone. It's completely different from 3 years ago when she could only rely on the celestial chrysanthemum. If it wasn't for this, our Sema clan would have already produced a Holy Son of Heaven assistant official, replacing the position of the celestial chrysanthemum minister. Weiji spoke frankly. The current Lord Holy Son of Heaven is no longer the same as 3 years ago. Although she is still very young and excessively kind, it is her saint-like purity that firmly attracts everyone. Even the celestial child, Chrysanthemum, serves her from the bottom of his heart. He has never thought of usurping the throne. Indeed, in the past, although the celestial chrysanthemum minister represented the dark side of Tokyo, he had never thought of usurping the Holy Son of Heaven's position. In fact, the celestial chrysanthemum minister respected and loved the Holy Son of Heaven. Even when his crimes were exposed by the Holy Son of Heaven, and the celestial chrysanthemum minister fell from grace due to the Holy Son of Heaven's help, he never resented the Holy Son of Heaven until his death. On the contrary, he was gratified by the Holy Son of Heaven's growth. In the current turbid era, the Holy Son of Heaven was very precious to the entire human race for being able to maintain such kindness and purity. Unfortunately, the purest flower in the world was inadvertently plucked by someone. Thinking of this, Noah once again realized that he was indeed a person blessed by the world. Without this level of protection, it would not be so easy to pluck this flower. While Noah was sighing, Ryutaro spoke to Noah again. Speaking of which, since Lord Xingzi has already gone to visit the representatives of the various countries, as the master of Fairyland, shouldn't you go and do a little formality? There's no need. Noah picked up the black tea on the table and leisurely sipped it while answering without hesitation. If it's a meeting for the purpose of networking and exchange, then I don't mind going through the motions and establishing a friendly relationship with the various countries. Unfortunately, they're not here to be friendly with us, but to target us. If that's the case, what's the point of asking about their well-being? Ryutaro thought about it carefully and found that it made sense. But can't we still sound out the opinions of the various countries' representatives? There's no need for that. Noah pursed his lips and smiled. Because no matter what they've prepared for the meeting in the afternoon, I'll make sure they're all speechless. His extremely confident and forceful speech made Ryutaro's heart surge slightly. Even Weiji's eyes were twinkling like little stars as she looked at Noah with a look of admiration. As expected of the man I've chosen. To be able to become a man who can compete for the world's hegemony in less than 5 years, you're not just for show. If I had known this would happen, I would have made my move earlier, and taking you down to prevent Mugung from taking advantage of me. The surge in Ryutaro's heart completely disappeared, and was replaced by an indescribable feeling. Even Noah almost rolled his eyes as he said in annoyance. Even if I don't do anything and just sit here, it doesn't mean that the probing won't happen. Both Weiji and Ryutaro were slightly taken aback by this sentence. I'm well prepared, but other people aren't. Noah smiled meaningfully. So, even if I don't go looking for others, they might come looking for me. It was as if he was trying to prove that Noah wasn't lying. In the next second, there was a knock on the door. Weiji and Ryutaro immediately reacted and focused their attention on Noah. Noah was still drinking his tea as he nodded at Ryutaro. Ryutaro immediately stood up, stepped forward, opened the door, and walked out. After a while, Ryutaro came back in and looked at Noah with a serious expression. Noah asked when he saw the situation. Who is it? Ryutaro was silent for a moment before he spoke. Chiwoo Myunsuk. Noah raised an eyebrow, then smiled. I didn't think he would want to contact me. I thought he would never want to see me again. After all, Noah was the one who made this dictator fall. It must have left quite a scar in his heart. But that guy's got the guts. Noah put down his teacup and said, "Let him come in." Rintaro immediately nodded, turned around, and walked out again. Noah. Mugging finally recovered from the shock, and came to Noah's side. Don't worry, Noah said calmly. 3 years ago, I had him under my thumb. 3 years later, I can do the same. Muging's expression softened. He nodded and stood behind Noah. Not long after, Ryutaro opened the door and walked in with a person. That person was naturally Chiwoo Myunsuk. After 3 years, Chiwoo Myunsuk still gave off the same imposing aura as before. He was like a lion that was ready to devour its prey at any moment. However, 3 years ago when they first met, Chiwoo Myunsuk only regarded Noah as the leader of a police organization with some ability. Every word he said was filled with extraordinary arrogance. Today, Chiwoo Myunsuk no longer had the same arrogance as before. The moment his eyes met with Noah's, his expression immediately became serious. Long time no see, President Chiwoo, Noah said with a faint smile. I haven't seen you for 3 years. It seems that your body is still as strong as before. After all, it wasn't easy for me to survive from your hands, Chiwoo Myunsuk said in a self-deprecating manner. If I die so casually, wouldn't that be very disrespectful to you? I don't think so. Noah spread his hands. After all, there's a distance between Fairyland and the Osaka area. The mountain is high and the emperor is far away. It's not easy to do anything. On the contrary, there should be many people in the Osaka area who hate President Chiwoo Myunsuk. I wouldn't be surprised if someone succeeded in venting their anger. Unfortunately, other than you, I've never been defeated by anyone. Chiwoo Myunsuk narrowed his eyes. I'm sorry to disappoint you. It's not that I'm disappointed. Noah glanced at Chiwoo Myunsuk. To me, whether you live or die really doesn't matter much. Chapter 21-28. Just like 3 years ago, the beginning of the conversation between Noah and Chiwoo Zhongshuan made the atmosphere extremely dangerous. The sinister atmosphere made Mugging and Rintaro's faces tense, while Meiji was secretly nervous. Under such circumstances, Noah and Zhongshuan looked at each other, one with a smile on his face, the other with an awkward expression. It was clear who had the upper hand. Seeing the atmosphere of the entire lounge become extremely heavy, Weiji seemed to want to break the deadlock. She coughed and stood up. Hello, President Zhongshuan. I haven't greeted you in a long time. The daughter of the Sima family? Zhongshuan turned his gaze and looked at Weiji. After looking at the kimono beauty in front of him for a while, he smiled unrestrainedly. I heard that your Sima clan has completely replaced the Tiantong clan's position in the past. That's really worth celebrating. Thank you for the compliment. Weiji smiled sweetly. This time, it is also thanks to the Holy Son of Heaven that Weiji has the opportunity to serve the representatives of various countries. I am deeply honored. You're quite a sweet talker. No wonder the old man of the Sima family is assured to give you the political and commercial rights. At least on the surface, you're quite good, Zhongshuan said with a sarcastic tone. Also, you seem to have a good relationship with Fairyland. After all, if it weren't for President Noah, our Sima family wouldn't have today's status. Weiji knows how to repay kindness. Weiji replied unhurriedly. Besides, the Tokyo region and Fairyland are allies. As the Holy Son of Heaven's assistant, Weiji naturally has to have a good relationship with the leader of Fairyland. With that said, Weiji's tone changed. However, President Zhongshuan seems to have something to discuss with President Noah. It would be rude of me to stay here any longer, so I'll take my leave. After that, Weiji bowed to Zhongshuan, then glanced at Noah's direction. After seeing Noah nodding slightly, she smiled and left. Finally, only the rulers of Fairyland and Osaka were left at the scene. President Chiwu. Mu Gung was like Noah's secretary as he greeted Chiwu Zhongshuan. Please take a seat. Humph, Chiwu Zhongshuan snorted, but he followed Mu Gung's instructions and sat opposite Noah. Looking at Mugging and Rintaro, who were standing by Noah's left and right, Chiwu Zhongshuan said to the two of them. Back then, I never would have thought that the two brats left behind by the Celestial Tong family would actually join the guild Fairy Tale. Furthermore, they even made such a big name for themselves. I guess I misjudged them. Hearing this, Mugging and Rintaro did not feel the slightest bit of joy at being praised. The two of them were no longer ignorant people. They wouldn't be deceived by such flowery words. Instead, they could clearly perceive the deeper meaning in other people's words. If even Mugging and Rintaro could sense it, there was no way Noah wouldn't know what Zimu Zhongshuan meant. 3 years ago, President Chiwu mentioned more than once that in order to fight for world hegemony, it was necessary to have a powerful force. For the sake of one's ambition, one must turn all the powerful guys into one's own pawns, right? Noah said casually. What? Has the president taken a fancy to Mugging and Rintaro? One is ranked 3rd in the IP ranking, and the other is ranked 7th. These two can be ranked in the top 10. Of course I want them. Chiwu Zhongshuan stared at Noah. In this era, great power can decide everything. Only the side that has greater power can obtain the hegemony of the world. As the leader of Fairy Tale, you should understand this better than I do, right? Oh, Noah pretended to be confused. What do you mean? Are you trying to play dumb? Chiwu Zhongshuan said sarcastically, with a hint of jealousy in his tone. Now, who doesn't know that you have the ability to obtain the world? You've easily gotten what I've always wanted, haven't you? I'm even beginning to suspect that the reason you created Fairy Tale back then was to prepare for the hegemony of the world. Chiwu Zhongshuan's words made Mugging and Rintaro frown slightly, with a little anger surging in their hearts. As the heroes who built Fairyland to its current scale, Mugging and Rintaro knew better than anyone why Noah was working so hard. How could this ambitious guy before them understand Noah? To Noah, world hegemony was the most boring thing. Noah's efforts all along were not for some boring world hegemony, but to save those children who were hated and rejected for no reason. The reason why the children in Fairyland could live so happily, and the reason why the cursed children all over the world could find shelter, was all because of Noah's gentleness. However, in the eyes of others, Noah's gentleness had always been a conspiracy with a purpose. The rulers of many countries all over the world believed that the reason why Noah created Fairy Tale, built Fairyland, and provided shelter for the cursed children was to obtain the power of the cursed children and achieve his goal of world domination. No one would believe that a person would spend so much effort to do all this out of pure kindness. In this regard, as the acting president and tour group leader of Fairy Tale, Mugging and Rintaro could understand it best. This was because Mugging and Rintaro had also been questioned by others more than once, believing that the two of them helped Noah out of ambition, creating Fairyland, and working hard for Noah until their deaths. Who would have thought that? The reason why Mugging helped Noah without asking for anything in return was because Noah had helped her avenge her parents' death, and also gave her a new meaning in life, to not fall into the demonic path and become a person who could live under the sun. The reason why Rintaro helped Noah without asking for anything in return was because he and Noah were like-minded. Noah also wanted to save the cursed children, and also gave Rintaro the opportunity to save the world, defeat the protogut animals and uphold justice. Therefore, Noah was indebted to both Mugging and Rintaro. In the hearts of Mugging and Rintaro, there was friendship toward Noah, gratitude toward Noah, and even admiration for Noah. However, there was a saying that went, "Measure the heart of a gentleman with one's own yardstick." Undoubtedly, there were some petty people who were extremely unforgiving, but were unwilling to believe that others were magnanimous as well. This referred to people with ulterior motives like Qiwu Zhongshuan. Did you think that just because you wanted to dominate the world, others had to do the same? President Qiwu. Mugging couldn't help but say, "Dominating the world isn't as attractive as you think it is." That's right. Rintaro didn't hide the mockery in his voice. At least, that's how it is for us. Is that so? Qiwu Zhongshuan glanced at Mugging and Rintaro, then looked at Noah, who was quietly sipping his tea. Have you really never thought of dominating the world? The entire place fell silent. Under Qiwu Zhongshuan's gaze, Noah slowly raised his head, his expression extremely calm. If the whole world is filled with people like you, then I should really consider whether it's time for me to dominate the world, Noah said calmly. Otherwise, the world will really become a foul and stinky place. You? Qiwu Zhongshuan was immediately provoked, his fists clenched tightly. Noah spoke as if he hadn't seen anything. If you're here to confirm whether or not I have the intention of dominating the world, then are you satisfied with my answer? Qiwu Zhongshuan glared at Noah, his tightly clenched fists slowly unclenched. I admit that I underestimated you back then. I didn't expect you to be able to surpass me in just a few years, Qiwu Zhongshuan said in a low voice. However, I won't admit defeat just like that. With that, Qiwu Zhongshuan stood up and left. Looking at Qiwu Zhongshuan's back, Noah fell into deep thought. Chapter 21-29. With Qiwu Zhongshuan's departure, the entire lounge returned to a state of silence once again. Mugging and Rintaro had been watching Qiwu Zhongshuan's departure until he disappeared from their sight, and the door was slammed shut. Only then did they retract their gazes and look at each other. Soon after, Rintaro spoke first. That guy is still as annoying as before. Rintaro was no stranger to Qiwu Zhongshuan. In the past, when he was in the Tentong family, Prime Minister Chrysanthemum Tentong had groomed Rintaro as a politician. Because of that, Rintaro had been to all kinds of occasions and had naturally met Qiwu Zhongshuan. However, it was because he had met Qiwu Zhongshuan that Rintaro would say such a thing. Most people would not have a good impression of someone as ambitious as Qiwu Zhongshuan, right? Although I've seen Qiwu Zhongshuan before, that was before I left the Tiantong family. Mugging crossed her arms, accentuating her ample bosom perfectly. After that, I've never seen the president again. Now that I think about it, it's great. It seemed that Mugging did not have a good impression of Qiwu Zhongshuan as well. When she thought about how it would turn into a confrontation between herself, the acting president, and Qiwu Zhongshuan if Noah did not return, Mugging found it very annoying no matter how she thought about it. Someone as ambitious as that would probably hate Fairyland's existence the most, right? Mugging pointed that out. In this meeting, the people who directly clash with us should all be people like Qiwu and Zhongshuan. Although the representatives of the various countries who came to participate in this international conference were all here for Fairy Tale and had the same goal, their starting points were different. Some representatives wanted to fight for the strength of the cursed child for their country. Some wanted to get rid of the situation where they might be controlled by Fairyland in the future. Some wanted to take advantage of the situation to weaken Fairyland's influence on the world. Some country representatives were like Qiwu Zhongshuan, whose ultimate goal was world hegemony. They could not bear to see the threat of Fairyland and wanted to suppress or even eliminate it. In other words, although the representatives of these countries were all here for Fairy Tale, some were here for their countries, some for their rights, some for their own interests, and some for their own ambitions. Among them, people like Qiwu Zhongshuan, who believed that Fairy Tale was a huge threat and had their eyes on what they wanted, were undoubtedly the people who were most hostile to Fairy Tale. Isn't this the kind of person we need to pay attention to the most? Ryutaru scratched his head in annoyance. Really, it's one thing to be targeted by terrorist forces who can't see the truth, but I still have to deal with these ambitious guys. Just thinking about it makes me feel annoyed. But if Fairy Tale wants to save all of the cursed children, or even the entire world, she will have to face these people sooner or later. Mugging was very open-minded. We'll definitely have to deal with these people in the future. Ricky-kun, you better be mentally prepared. I'm not good at dealing with these guys. Ryutaru quickly shook his head. Miss Mugging, if you want me to be your bodyguard, then I'll do my best. If you want me to feign civility with these guys, then forget it. That's why Ricky-kun is really useless. Mugging said unhappily. Fortunately, I have Xiaoshi to give me ideas. Otherwise, I don't know how I'll survive these 3 years. Alright, I'm useless. Ryutaru spread his hands. Noah, on the other hand, did not hear the conversation between Mugging and Ryutaru at all, as he was lost in his own thoughts. After a while, Noah raised his head and looked at Mugging. Mugging, can you get someone to keep an eye on Chiwu Zhongshuan? Get someone to keep an eye on Chiwu Zhongshuan. Mugging was stunned before she reacted. Why? Is there a problem with Chiwu Zhongshuan? There are many problems. He's so ambitious that it's already a problem for us. Noah shrugged. It's just that his dedication to world hegemony has made me somewhat suspicious. Suspicious? Ryutaru asked. Suspicious of what? Noah softly uttered a name, causing Mugging and Ryutaru to widen their eyes slightly. Are you sure? Mugging asked in surprise. Are you sure Chiwu Zhongshuan has something to do with that? Of course I'm not sure. Noah laughed. If I were sure, then I wouldn't have asked you to get someone to keep an eye on him. It's just my suspicion. You're suspicious? Ryutaru pondered. Now that you mention it, I think it's possible. Although there are ambitious guys everywhere, Chiwu Zhongshuan's desire for world domination is stronger than anyone else's. Mugging turned her gaze to the door as if she could see Chiwu Zhongshuan's back. She suddenly smiled. If that's the case, then let's get that guy to do it. That guy. Ryutaru was stunned at first, then he seemed to know who Mugging was talking about. Are you going to let him keep an eye on Chiwu Zhongshuan? After all, that guy has met Chiwu Zhongshuan many times, so he's more familiar with Chiwu Zhongshuan than anyone else. Mugging smiled. Let him keep an eye on Chiwu Zhongshuan. Hearing this, Noah could not hold back his curiosity and asked, Who's that guy? The person who used to take care of us. Mugging said mysteriously. When we left Tokyo and moved to Fairyland, he didn't come with us. Still, he's our guardian in name, and has always kept in touch with us. After the existence of Fairyland was exposed a year ago, we've become closer than before. Sometimes, I'd even ask him for help with certain things, and now is the time to ask for his help. With that said, Mugging took out his phone and walked to the side to make a call. Watching Mugging like this, Ryutaru muttered wistfully. Come to think of it, it's been a long time since I've contacted him. Ryutaru's mutterings did not reach Noah's ears. That was because Noah was frowning and muttering. A year ago? It seems that a lot of things changed after Fairyland's existence was exposed a year ago. Not only was Fairy Tale completely pushed into the limelight, but the Tokyo region had also become an ally of Fairyland, and the relationships between various characters had also become clear. For example, Tina's sisters joined the Fairy Tale. Another example was when Zhuowei Run was resurrected and Li Qingyin reappeared. Furthermore, they were all standing opposite of Fairy Tale. The people around Noah, Mugging, Ryutaru, and the others seemed to be divided into 2 groups, either allies or enemies. If things continued to develop like this, the world structure would definitely become clear because of Fairyland's existence, and because of Fairy Tale's existence. But I've never had the patience to wait for things to develop slowly, Noah muttered. Let me just ignite a fire so that the fuses connected to all parts of the world will be burnt out, but not even an explosion will occur. While Noah was muttering to himself, Mugging had already finished making the call. It's done. Mugging walked over and said, The matter has been handed down, and they have also agreed to this matter. Unless Zhongshuanqi leaves Tokyo, he will be monitored 24 hours a day. Noah nodded and did not say anything else. After all, Zhongshuanqi was only one of the people that needed to be watched. Noah's opponent was not just Zhongshuanqi, but the representatives of all the countries in the world. In the following period of time, as Noah said before, all kinds of people came to the door, trying to find out something. Of course, in the face of such a cunning person like Noah, these people could only leave with a belly full of anger and dejectedly. Just like that, time passed little by little. Unknowingly, noon had quietly arrived. Chapter 2130. In the very center of the embassy, there is a very spacious conference room. This conference room, until recently, was used to exhibit the famous objects of the Tokyo area. It played the role of a museum, showing the essence of the Tokyo area to the ambassadors of foreign areas. It wasn't until the countries of the world proposed a meeting, and the location was chosen in the Tokyo area, that the Holy Sun temporarily renovated this hall into a conference room. At this moment, in the conference room, a round table was placed in the center, sitting in the middle of luxurious chairs. The door of the conference room was open, and two guards wearing the uniform of the Holy Residence Guard stood at the door. Representatives from all over the world were accompanied by guards to the conference room one by one, and only they entered by themselves. During the previous break, the representatives of all countries had already met each other. At this time, there was naturally no need for any greetings. After entering the conference room one by one, they directly sat down, and the seats began to be occupied one by one. After the appearance of protozoa, the world's population declined sharply, and most countries were completely destroyed by protozoa, disappearing in the long river of history. Under such circumstances, it is reasonable to say that the number of representatives of countries present should not be many. However, from the beginning, the number of representatives of countries has been increasing, occupying one seat after another. By the time there were only 2 seats left in the audience, the number of representatives of countries present was already close to 100 people. Why are there so many people? Could it be that all countries in the world sent multiple representatives? Of course not. In fact, if you think about it carefully, you will understand. Just like in the past, Japan is now divided into a total of 5 regions: Tokyo, Osaka, Sendai, Sapporo, and Bodo. The rest of the countries have suffered the same result as Japan, more or less divided into several regions. It is precisely because of this that in this world, the units of countries are not like before, basically divided by continents, but divided by regions. In other words, the Tokyo area is an independent country, the Osaka area is an independent country, and the rest of the areas are also divided into independent countries one after another. So the number of countries has not decreased by much. In view of this, the number of representatives from all over the world is so large. However, although the number is large, it doesn't give people a sense of noise. After all, the people present were either the heads of state or important people in power. None of them were ruffians and would not make a racket in such a formal occasion. Therefore, after taking their seats, every country's representatives just sat there quietly. Even if there were whispers from time to time, it would not spoil the solemn atmosphere of the scene. After an unknown period of time, the final main characters finally arrived. Under the watchful eyes of the guards, Noah and Seiko walked out from one end of the corridor, followed by Mugging and Rintaro. Together, they walked towards the door of the conference room. Before they even entered the conference room, Noah and the others could already see that the room was filled with representatives from various countries. The representatives in the conference room seemed to have noticed the arrival of Noah's group. They all turned their heads and looked at them. Their eyes were all focused on Noah, Seiko, Mugging, and Rintaro. Suddenly, other than Noah, Seiko, Mugging, and Rintaro's hearts tightened. Their expressions involuntarily became serious. There was still some distance between them and the conference room, but when they saw all the representatives sitting in the conference room, and felt the gazes of those representatives, Seiko, Mugging, and Rintaro had the illusion that they were about to step into the mouth of a ferocious beast. Only Noah's expression did not change. His face was calm. However, Noah asked Seiko in a low voice, "The things I asked you to prepare, have you prepared them?" "I've prepared them." Seiko did not turn around. She was still looking forward. Her red lips moved slightly as she said worriedly, "But can that avoid war? Ha, can it or not?" Noah smiled irresponsibly. "Just wait and see." With that, Noah did not hesitate. He quickened his pace and walked towards the conference room. Although Seiko still wanted to say something, looking at Noah's back, a surge of courage and trust emerged in his heart. He steadied himself and followed closely. Mugging and Rintaro did not hear the conversation between Noah and Seiko. They looked at each other and followed. When they reached the door, Rintaro stopped and watched as Noah, Seiko, and Mugging entered the conference room. Immediately, the two guards immediately stepped forward and slowly closed the wide door of the conference room. Bang! With a loud sound of the door closing, the entire conference room was completely sealed off. However, the heavy atmosphere in the air did not decrease. Instead, it increased. All the representatives looked at the arrival of Noah, Elysium, and Mugung. Their gazes changed, and they looked at each other. Everything was said in silence. Just like that, Noah and Seiko sat down in the remaining two seats. Only Mugung was left standing behind Noah. Looking at this scene, many of the representatives showed dissatisfaction. The importance of this international conference was self-evident. There was no need for further explanation. In order to avoid any accidents, the conference was conducted in a closed manner. Every country's representative had to go into battle alone. They were not even allowed to bring their guards with them. In the end, Noah brought someone with him. Was that not telling everyone that Noah was more special than everyone present, and even had a higher status? This way, the representatives of each country would naturally be dissatisfied. However, they were all smart people. They knew that this was not the time to denounce. That was because Mugung was not an ordinary guard. He was the acting president of Fairy Tale. Although after Noah's return, the biggest voice and decision-making power in Fairyland was Noah's. As Noah's spokesperson for the past 3 years, Mugung's existence had long been known by everyone. His reputation was comparable to the mysterious hermit. In other words, Mugung could also be a representative of Fairyland. Even so, it was equivalent to Fairyland sending 2 representatives. However, the international conference did not stipulate that a country could not send more than 1 representative, right? In this case, if they were to denounce, they would only end up with a few sarcastic remarks. It would not help the outcome at all. Thinking of this, even if they were dissatisfied, the representatives of each country did not say anything. Of course, many people thought that the reason Noah brought Mugung along was not because he lacked confidence, but because he was not in Fairyland for the past 3 years and did not understand the situation. If he were to attend this conference alone, he might be at a disadvantage. With this thought, many people began to think that the real troublesome one should be Mugung, and not Noah. Only some people knew that Noah was far more terrifying than Mugung. For example, Chiwu Zhongshuan. The opponent this time is not the brat from the Tentong family, but that terrifying cursed child shelter. That was Chiwu Zhongshuan's thought. Just as the representatives of each country were secretly observing Noah and Mugging with various thoughts in their minds, Elysian Sun stood up. First of all, I would like to express my gratitude to everyone here. Elysian Sun bowed. Thank you all for gathering in Tokyo today and choosing us as the venue for this international conference. In the name of the ruler of Tokyo, I swear to you that I will ensure the fairness of this conference and maintain the order of the conference. I hope you can cooperate with me. After that, Elysian Sun raised his head and said so. This conference has gathered all the countries in the world today. Almost all countries have sent representatives to participate in this conference. This is a grand event that has never happened since the beginning of the Protozoa War. Here, I sincerely hope that this international conference can promote exchanges between countries, speed up the connections and relationships between countries, and make humans more united, contributing to the eradication of the protozoa and the restoration of human territory. Elysian Sun said these words in a sincere tone. Then, in the name of the ruler of Tokyo, Elysian Sun, I declare. The first international conference officially begins. Chapter 2131. President Noah. President Noah. President Noah. When Seiji announced the start of the meeting, most of the representatives couldn't wait to speak, and they all spoke in Japanese. After all, they were representatives of various countries selected to participate in the international conference. In order to achieve their own goals in the conference, it was unlikely that the countries in the world would send someone who had to communicate through a translator as a representative. There was some risk involved in that. However, when the representatives of various countries were about to speak, Noah suddenly raised his hand. "Everyone, I'm sorry." Noah interrupted the speech of all the representatives with a very calm sentence. "Before the meeting begins, I want everyone to witness a big action initiated by Fairyland with me." With one sentence, all the representatives present were stunned. Ignoring the stunned representatives, Noah looked at Sheng Tianzi and said to him, "Bring up the things you've prepared." "What?" Sheng Tianzi was extremely surprised. "Now. That's right." Noah looked straight at Sheng Tianzi. "Now." "Got it." Sheng Tianzi's face was full of confusion. He didn't know what Noah was going to do, but he still did as Noah said. He took out the communicator from his arms and said, "Bring up the things." As soon as Sheng Tianzi's words fell, the door of the conference room opened. The moment the clear sound of the door opening rang out, all the representatives present turned their gazes towards the door. In the next second, all the representatives of the various countries saw it. Two guards of the holy abode pushed a cart with a large LCD screen on it, and came in from the door. Seeing this scene, all the representatives looked at each other in dismay. What are they going to do? Even Qiwu Zhongshuan in the crowd frowned. He stared at the LCD screen that was slowly pushed in by the guards, and couldn't help but ask in a deep voice. "President Noah, Lord Sheng Tianzi, what are you going to do?" "Don't worry, President Qiwu," Noah said calmly. "You'll know later. Anyway, I won't disappoint you." Unfortunately, the more Noah said this, the more uneasy Zhongshuan felt. Because Qiwu Zhongshuan knew that the true master of Fairyland would never do something meaningless for no reason. When the international conference was announced, Noah was definitely not trying to mystify things by doing this. Therefore, Qiwu Zhongshuan had a feeling. Following this, the development of the entire international conference would most likely exceed the expectations of all the representatives present. With this thought in mind, Qiwu Zhongshuan suppressed the uneasiness in his heart and stared closely at the LCD screen. All the representatives present had their attention completely focused on the LCD screen, their expressions more or less carrying a trace of confusion and doubt. Just like that, the two guards pushed the screen to the front of the conference room, facing all the representatives. Only Noah had his back to the LCD screen. Then the two guards bowed and retreated, closing the door of the conference room again. It was only then that Noah stood up, looked around at all the representatives present, and said, "Next, I'm going to show you an annihilation operation launched by Fairyland alone." An annihilation operation? The representatives were shocked. What does this mean? Could it be that Fairyland was preparing to attack a nation? Is this man going to show the power of Fairyland, and use a reign of terror to make everyone here compromise? All of a sudden, all the representatives of the various countries were filled with fear. Noah, on the other hand, acted as if he did not see anything and spoke to Mugung. "Mugung, get ready." "Got it." Mugung seemed a little surprised, clearly not knowing what Noah was planning. However, before the conference began, Noah did ask her to make some preparations. Therefore, when Noah spoke, Mugung walked to the side of the LCD screen and started operating on a laptop next to the LCD screen. Clang. In the next second, the LCD screen lit up and showed an image. The scene that appeared on the screen was a forest. Looking at the forest on the screen, the expressions of many of the representatives present changed abruptly. The demonic forest? The demonic forest. This name was familiar to all humans. This was especially true for those of the older generation who had experienced the first Protogut animal war. This name was enough to make them turn pale in fear, because as the name suggests, it was one of the three great demonic realms in the world today. In this era where the protozoans appeared and most of the human land was occupied by them, there were three places that were classified as the most dangerous regions by the world. In those 3 regions, the most terrifying protozoans in the world lived. Some of them were occupied by a large number of protozoans, treating them as territories and territories. Some of them were hibernating protozoans of the highest level, which were stage V zodiac protozoans. Even other protozoans did not dare to step into them. Therefore, these 3 regions were called the demonic realms by humans. They were the demonic forest, the demonic canyon, and the demonic sea region. If one day, humans had the ability to attack the 3 great demonic realms, it would mean that the protozoans were about to be wiped out, and the human race would regain its past glory. Therefore, the ultimate goal of humans was to trample the 3 great demonic realms. At this moment, the forest shown on the LCD screen was one of the 3 great demonic realms, the demonic forest. In there lived a group of the highest level protozoans in the world. The protozoans in this forest were at least stage 3 protozoans. Moreover, the regeneration ability of these protozoans was almost all above stage 2. So they were not monsters that could be eliminated by simply relying on the rhenium metal. As for the protozoans living in there, their number could definitely be described as tens of thousands. Tens of thousands of protozoans with the lowest stage 3 protozoans. Moreover, their regeneration ability was above stage 2, and could not be completely eliminated by the rhenium metal alone. If such a forest couldn't be called the demonic realm, then what was the demonic realm? As the representatives of the various countries looked on in shock, Mugung, who was operating the laptop, spoke. What everyone is seeing now is an image captured by our Fairyland's artificial satellite, and it's a live broadcast. As soon as he said that, not only the representatives of the various countries around the world, but even the Holy Sun's expression changed slightly. Among the 11 stage V protozoans known as the Zodiac, one of them was called Sagittarius. It was a protozoan that possessed extremely rare long-range attack means, and its danger level was far above the other stage V protozoans. When this protozoan first appeared in people's sight, it did something that caused great losses to the entire human world. That was, most of the artificial satellites launched into outer space by various countries around the world were shot down by Sagittarius. Today, Sagittarius was still a huge threat to the artificial satellites created by humans, making artificial satellites extremely precious. Artificial satellites that could be successfully launched into space and survive had practically become living fossils. He did not expect that Fairyland would have the ability to launch artificial satellites into outer space, and even successfully preserve them after just 3 years of being established. This made all the representatives of the various countries realize that it was not just strength, but Fairyland's technological development was also not inferior to the major countries. Just as the various countries' representatives had such a thought, Noah's voice suddenly rang out. "All right, the operation is about to begin. Everyone, please pay attention to the screen." Hearing that, the representatives of the various countries present almost subconsciously raised their eyes and looked at the live broadcast on the LCD screen. Then everyone saw on the screen that in one of the directions of the demonic forest, military helicopters were speeding in from the distance. When the military helicopters landed on the ground, one by one, people came down from the helicopters. These people were all 13 or 14 years old. Little girls who were clearly underage. Obviously, they were all cursed children. On these cursed children, a sigil that resembled a fairy could be faintly seen. There was no need to explain the cursed children's affiliation. Chapter 2132. Seeing the cursed children disembarking from the military helicopter one after another and lining up neatly, facing the demonic forest, all the country representatives in the conference room widened their eyes slightly. Initiator of the IP ranking number 3, Think Tank. Initiator of the IP ranking number 4, Pluto. Initiator of the IP ranking number 6, Multiple Eyes. Initiator of the IP ranking number 7, Tornado. Initiator of the IP ranking number 9, Small Annihilation. Initiator of the IP ranking number 10, Dive into the Sea. One by one, the nicknames of the initiators that almost resounded throughout the world appeared in the conference room amidst the shocked voices of the country representatives. Even Mugging and the Holy Son of Heaven stared blankly at the familiar faces of the girls at the front of the neatly arranged initiator group on the LCD screen, and fell into shock. After all, among them, even Xiaoshi and Yinju were among them, and their images were clearly reflected on the screen. Other than Xiaoshi and Yinju, who were among the top 10 initiators in the IP ranking, in the group formed purely by the Cursed Children, the remaining initiators were also very famous. Among them, there was no lack of initiators in the top 100 IP ranking. As such, how could the representatives of the various countries not recognize these young ladies? As for Mugging, he was even more familiar with these girls. As the acting president of Fairy Tail, Mugging could clearly tell everyone that the children in that group were all the top initiators in Fairy Tail. Just by the IP ranking alone, there was not a single one of them who was not in the top 1,000. And these initiators were all gathered in front of the demonic forest, one of the 3 demonic realms in the world, and their numbers were definitely above 500. In other words, other than the initiators and the top 1,000 initiators, the highest combat power in Fairyland was all gathered together. They were led by a girl. Looking at the girl standing at the front of the group, her dress fluttering in the wind, her silver blonde hair rippling, and her eyes turning into a cold scarlet color, the representatives of the countries present were almost speechless. The initiator of the first IP ranking, Black Wind. Tina was the one who led the initiators of Fairy Tail, in the top 1,000. What's going on? Have all the initiators in Fairy Village gathered in the demonic forest? What are you planning to do? All the representatives of the various countries were in an uproar. Noah, Mugging and the Elysian son of Sage also spoke to Noah, their faces full of shock and confusion. In response, Noah only gave the two of them a reassuring look, but the words he said made the crowd even noisier. As all of you can see, the target of our annihilation operation this time is the demonic forest. When they heard this, all the representatives had only one thought in their minds. Ridiculous. It was so absurd that it made people speechless. Guild leader Noah. After a moment of silence, Chiwu Zhongshuan turned to look at Noah. Do you know what you're saying? What? Noah said without batting an eyelid. Does President Chiwu think this is unrealistic? Isn't that a matter of course? Chiwu Zhongshuan said with either pity or sarcasm. If the 3 great demonic realms were so easy to annihilate, humans would have reclaimed all their lands and wiped out all the protozoa. Why wait until now? Following Chiwu Zhongshuan's words, the representatives of the various countries present spoke one after another. Just as President Chiwu said, humans currently do not have the ability to invade the 3 great demonic realms. Take the demonic forest for example. Even if we don't count the protozoa, they are at least stage 3 beings. If we only count the level of their regenerative ability, that is not something we can overcome with rhenium metal. It would be fine if there were only a dozen or 20 of those protozoa, but in the demonic forest, there are thousands of them. Although Fairy Village's combat power is astonishing, it is impossible to annihilate the demonic forest at this stage. Impossible. Absolutely impossible. That was the voice of the representatives of the various countries. It was not just the representatives of the various countries, even Mugging and the Holy Sun agreed with that statement. Although Fairy Village's lineup was astonishing, it was only a part of the current world. The 3 great demonic realms, on the other hand, were rated as dangerous places that would be difficult to conquer even if all the forces of the current world were gathered. After all, the protozoa there were not only extremely high levels, but also extraordinary levels of regenerative ability, making them very difficult to annihilate. No matter how powerful the initiators were, if they did not have the means to kill the protozoa, there was nothing they could do. That was proven by Noah's battle with Maxwell in the box. However, now Noah wanted the hundreds of initiators in Fairy Village to conquer such a dangerous place? Impossible. Apart from Noah, that was what everyone present thought. At that moment, the representatives of the various countries had completely forgotten the initial purpose of this meeting. All of them were discussing and shaking their heads in denial. Noah, Mugging and the Holy Sun turned their worried gazes to Noah. However, Noah's expression did not change. Since that's what everyone thinks, Why not waste some time and watch Fairy Village's spontaneous battle of annihilation? Noah chuckled. All right, it's time to begin. With that, Noah turned around and looked at the LCD screen behind him. The representatives of the various countries present looked at each other before turning their gazes to the LCD screen. At the same time, before the demonic forest, the initiators of Fairy Village who had finished lining up all raised the weapons in their hands. With Tina's command, all of the initiators of Fairy Village let out a battle cry and surged into the demonic forest without hesitation. Moreover, their speed was shockingly fast. The distance of several hundred meters was reduced to 0 in the blink of an eye. Then, the initiators dashed into the demonic forest like agile cheetahs, leaping back and forth between trees, ground, and rock walls as they charged into the depths of the forest. Roar, 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 roar. As if sensing the intruders, roars and howls like a tidal wave echoed from every corner of the demonic forest. In the next second, a gigantic creature with an extremely strange appearance appeared in front of the forest. It was as if dozens of different animals had been forcefully blended together, charging at them violently. A stage for protozoan. In the meeting room, a country representative shouted out the protozoan's level. As soon as they entered the forest, the initiators of Fairy Village were faced with a stage for protozoan. The gigantic protozoan roared as it crashed through one tree after another, trampling on the ground as it charged forward like a ferocious beast. Against the stage for protozoan that was charging at them in a grand manner, none of the initiators of Fairy Village showed any fear. Then one of them charged out. Hiya! Dressed in a light one-piece dress and a jacket, Yinju shot through the air like a flash of light. With a clear cry, she instantly arrived in front of the charging primitive gut animals. Then, a kick as quick as lightning was unleashed on Yinju's foot. Bang! A heavy, muffled explosion resounded. The powerful kick unleashed from Yinju's feet directly blasted the charging protozoa into pieces, turning it into a pile of minced meat that fell to the ground. After the minced meat wriggled a few times on the ground, it instantly became motionless. Yinju, who landed on the ground, did not even look at the minced meat on the ground. Instead, she met up with the party that was advancing without stopping and continued to advance into the depths of the forest. The stench of blood filled the entire forest. Roar, 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 roar. Roar, 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 roar. Woo! As if the entire demonic forest was in a complete riot, the cries of the protozoan echoed everywhere. Chapter 2133. Rumble. The ground of the forest began to shake and shake. Bam, 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 bam. The sound of trees being smashed into pieces could also be heard. Around the initiators who were moving into the depths of the demonic forest, gigantic protozoa were roaring and roaring as they knocked down trees along the way. Like sharks that had caught the scent of blood, they surged toward the initiators. Not long after, the gigantic protozoa had knocked away the trees that were blocking their way, and leaped out from every direction. Their eyes flashed with a ferocious glint as they opened their mouths filled with fangs and saliva at the initiators before them and pounced. In just an instant, hundreds of Fairyland initiators were surrounded by dozens of protozoa. Moreover, those protozoa were all at least at stage 3 level, with some of them even at stage 4 level. Their gigantic size was very intimidating. Even so, there was not a hint of fear on the faces of the initiators from Fairyland. Their advancing footsteps did not pause at all, and merely raised the weapons in their hands to meet the army of primitive animals that were encircling them. Roar, 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 roar. The monsters' roars shook the air. Hey-ah! The girls' cries echoed all around. The cursed children with weapons in hand faced the army of protozoa directly, clashing head-on with them. Bam, 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 bam. The initiators who were wielding guns pulled the triggers of their weapons, causing the muzzles to burst into blazing flames. The bullets that blanketed the sky were unleashed at the protozoa around them, landing on the gigantic protozoa one after another. The higher the stage of the protozoa, the larger its size would be. In order to support its gigantic body, the higher the stage of the protozoa, the harder its skin would be to penetrate. The protozoa in the demonic forest were at least stage 3 beings. Naturally, they were gigantic in size and had extremely tough skin. To break through the protozoa's skin, If one were to use firearms and ammunition, the firepower must not be weak. Therefore, every bullet fired at the protozoa around them was as powerful as a shot from an anti-tank sniper rifle. In an instant, powerful bullets tore through the skin of the protozoa one after another, causing their flesh and blood to splatter everywhere as they roared in pain. And at that moment, the initiator of the melee battle rushed forward, using the weapons in his hands to strike thunderously at the protozoa. All of a sudden, the protozoa that were at least stage 3 fell one after another under the initiators. Not a single one of them remained intact. They were either blasted apart or minced into a pile of minced meat. Then, just like the protozoa from before, the minced meat wriggled on the ground for a while before stopping altogether, turning into a pile of carcass remains. The initiators, led by Tina, only took 30 seconds to take care of this group of primitive animals. 30 seconds later, the hundreds of initiators finished off all the protozoa that surrounded them. Like agile cheetahs, they continued to leap between the trees and marched forward. His footsteps did not stop at all. Wow! In the conference room, the representatives of each country who saw this scene on the LCD screen all stood up abruptly with shocked expressions on their faces. How is this possible? An army of protozoa that were at least stage 3 or above was taken care of just like that. They didn't regenerate. Moreover, aren't the initiators' abilities too high? It's one thing for the tornado to be able to take care of the stage for protozoa in one hit. After all, it's the 7th IP ranking. But how come the initiators who are only ranked within the top 1,000 have such powerful combat strength? At this moment, all the representatives of each country were shocked. There were two reasons. One was that the protozoa did not regenerate. The protozoa in the demonic forest were famous for their extremely high regenerative abilities. Basically, they were all at least level 2 regenerative abilities and could ignore the level of ordinary machine-made weapons. However, from the beginning, none of the dozens of protozoa showed that level of regenerative ability and were defeated in an instant. Moreover, the initiators displayed on the LCD screen were also astonishingly powerful. Be it the top 10 initiators, the top 100 initiators, or the top 1,000 initiators, all of them seem to have received an astonishing amount of combat power at this moment. Be it the stage 3 or 4 protozoa, all of them were dealt with in an instant. This group of initiators with amazing abilities swept through the army in the forest that was regarded as the demonic forest without stopping. Facing the huge protozoa that came from all directions crashing through trees, rock walls, and caves, they fearlessly raised their weapons and faced them head-on. Displaying their terrifying combat strength, they killed the protozoa one after another on the spot. It was as if they had entered a place where no one could stop them. Impossible. Some of the representatives of each country couldn't help but use their own country's language. Gulp. The representatives of the other countries couldn't help but gulp as they watched the performance of the group of initiators with amazing combat strength on the LCD screen. Huff. Huff. Qiwu Zhongshuan tried desperately to calm himself down, but his breathing became more and more rapid. On the other hand, Mu Gung and Sheng Tianzi were both surprised and delighted. The group of initiators belonging to Fairy Tail had shocked the representatives from all over the world. In front of the representatives of these countries, the corners of Noah's mouth slowly curled up, and he finally spoke. According to the reconnaissance of Fairyland's artificial satellite, apart from those stage 1 and 2 insignificant characters who accidentally entered the forest from the outside, there are a total of 12,573 stage 3 and stage 4 protozoa that are known for their high level of regenerative ability. On the other hand, we sent 648 initiators, a difference of about 21. And with this annihilation speed, even if we include the time for searching, traveling, resting, and eating, a day is more than enough to clear out the entire demonic forest. Noah looked around at all the representatives of the countries present, his voice resounding throughout the entire place. I wonder if everyone still doubts whether Fairyland's annihilation operation will succeed? Noah's words did not draw any response from anyone. All the representatives of the countries present were so shocked that they could not react at all. In the end, Qiwu Zhongshuan was the only one who stared at the initiator team on the LCD screen. His voice was hoarse. How? How did you do it? Upon hearing that, Noah glanced at Chiwu Zhongshuan and curled his lips into a smile. What are you referring to, President Chiwu? Don't play dumb. Chiwu Zhongshuan slammed the table in excitement. Why didn't the protozoa in the demonic forest regenerate? Since when did the initiators of Fairyland become so powerful? The combat ability displayed by each initiator is enough to rank in the top 10 of the IP ranking, right? Don't tell me you're not the one behind this. Why would President Chiwu think that I'm the one behind this? Noah asked innocently. Can it be that the children in my guild have been hiding their true strength, and are finally showing their true strength now? Nonsense, Chiwu Zhongshuan retorted without hesitation. According to the investigation, other than those in the top 10 of the IP ranking, the rest of the initiators in Fairyland have never shown this level of ability before. If they were hiding their true strength, with so many of them, one or two of them should have been exposed long ago. Is that so? The innocence on Noah's face disappeared, and was replaced by a half-smile. Then I'm sorry to trouble you, President Chiwu. To investigate the children in our guild so thoroughly. Well, Chiwu Zhongshuan's eyelids twitched when he realized that he had said something stupid. However, Noah no longer paid attention to Chiwu Zhongshuan. He turned around and went to the laptop next to the LCD screen and started operating it. The next moment, the image on the screen began to expand, showing the waists of the children who were killing in the forest. It was only then that all the country representatives noticed. On the waists of those children were all wearing a small device. Chapter 2134. What? What is that? Looking at the small device displayed on the screen, all the representatives present had a look of disbelief, because none of the representatives present could recognize the small device pinned to the waists of the initiators. It was as small as a mobile phone. It was bright red all over. There was a bright gemstone embedded in the middle, and that gemstone was emitting light at this time, sprinkling a somewhat mystical color. The cursed children, who were the initiators of the attack on the demonic forest, were all wearing such a small device. Noah pointed at the small device on the screen and said to everyone present, "You can call it an artificial artifact." An artificial artifact? The representatives of each country said in a somewhat deranged voice. An artificial artifact? Chiwu Zhongshuan muttered in a low voice. An artificial artifact? Muging's face was full of confusion. An artificial artifact? Elysian stared at the small device displayed on the screen. His slender hand slowly clenched. Looking at everyone's confused expression, Noah spread his hands and said so. You can treat this as one of my gains from disappearing for 3 years. Hearing that, everyone reacted. Gains from disappearing for 3 years? Chiwu Zhongshuan said with some uncertainty. In other words, this device called an artificial artifact is the reason why the initiators of Fairyland's ability became so amazing? That's right. Noah admitted frankly. The effect of this artificial artifact is very simple, which is to increase the activity of the protozoan virus in the cursed children's body to the limit, reaching the critical point. If the initiators who have not reached the growth limit wear this artificial artifact, then during the period when the artifact is in effect, their ability will be increased to the limit of growth. Noah revealed a shocking fact. And if the person wearing it is the initiator who has reached the growth limit, then during the period when the artifact is in effect, their ability will break through the growth limit. Break through the growth limit? The expressions of the representatives changed. Then doesn't that mean? Mugung, Elysian, and Chiwu Zhongshuan were all shocked. It seems that all of you have thought of it. Noah suddenly smiled. Yes, it can help the initiator reach the state of domain, and obtain the ability that is comparable to the high-ranking initiators. Although it can only be achieved during the period when the artifact is in effect, at least during this period of time, every initiator who reaches the limit of growth will obtain great power. Noah operated the laptop again and restored the image. On the screen, hundreds of Fairyland's initiators charged into the demonic forest, as if they had entered no man's land, advancing at an astonishing speed. The scene of him effortlessly killing one protozoa after another was imprinted in everyone's eyes once again. The children who are attacking the demonic forest are all wearing artificial artifacts, and they are all initiators who have reached the limit of growth. Noah's voice clearly entered everyone's ears. In other words, what you are seeing now is a total of 648 initiators who have reached the realm of domain and have surpassed the limit. All of them are strong enough to be ranked in the top 10 of the IP rankings. They have formed a team to attack the demonic forest. A total of 648 initiators who had reached the realm of domain collectively attacking. At a time when a single initiator who had reached the realm of domain had the ability to change the world's military structure. How terrifying would the power of a total of 648 initiators who had reached the realm of domain collectively working together be? This fact was displayed in front of all the representatives of the countries in the world. Even if an initiator who has reached the realm of domain wears an artificial artifact, the activity of the protozoa virus in the body will be raised to an extremely high level. The power obtained will definitely be more powerful than a stage V protozoa. Noah's voice rang out powerfully. And the protozoa virus that has reached the limit will also trigger a kind of field that can affect the activation of the protozoa virus in other individuals. Unless they also have an artificial artifact that can cancel each other out, no matter if the target is a cursed child or a protozoa, they will not be able to trigger the regenerative ability. This way, when the host completely dies, the parasitic protozoa virus would naturally die along with it, not allowing the host to regenerate. What did this mean? That is to say, the son of the sage said with some difficulty. This artificial artifact can replace the T-metal? Not only the T-metal, it can even replace the T-metal. Noah dropped such a bombshell. With it, even if humans lose the T, they can still resist the protozoa. At this moment, all the representatives of the countries widened their eyes and trembled. Hope, Mugging muttered. Hope that they can completely defeat the protozoa. Yes. This was the hope that humans could completely defeat the protozoa. One had to know that although the T could suppress the regeneration of the protozoa, this metal was limited and could only be mined in volcanic areas. At present, all the countries in the world had already developed a sense of crisis. That was the gradual decrease of the T metal. If one day, the T metal was completely used up, then humans would no longer have the means to fight against the protozoa. Even the giant stone tablet that protected the last pure land of humans was made of T. Therefore, once the T metal disappeared, then humans would truly perish. However, the artificial artifact in front of them brought new hope. If this artificial artifact could really replace the T metal and completely suppress the regeneration of the protozoa, it could even suppress the level 2 regeneration ability that could ignore the T metal. It could even replace the T metal and suppress the strongest level 5 regeneration ability. Then it would no longer be a dream for humans to defeat the protozoa. Not to mention, it could also increase the power of the initiators and give birth to batches of initiators who could break through the growth limit and reach the domain realm. With this power, hundreds of people could conquer one of the 3 great demon realms in the world. If it continued to increase, then defeating all the protozoa would no longer be a dream? Thinking of this, not to mention Mugging, even the representatives of the countries were trembling with excitement. The son of the sage, who longed for peace, was almost suffocating and almost shed tears. However, at this moment, Noah suddenly poured a basin of cold water on them. Unfortunately, the artificial artifact increased the activity of the protozoa virus to the point of breaking through the growth limit. That will also increase the erosion rate of the protozoa virus in the cursed child's body to the limit. Noah tapped on the laptop in front of him and said calmly, "According to my calculations, if a cursed child who has reached the growth limit uses the artificial artifact, then within 10 minutes, the erosion rate of the protozoa virus in his body will increase to more than 50%, and he will become a protozoa." That one sentence woke everyone up from their excitement. How could this be? The son of the sage's expression changed abruptly. Doesn't that mean that the use of this artificial artifact has to be exchanged with the lives of the cursed children? Of course not. Noah smiled and waved his hand. That's only for the average cursed child. Fairyland has a preparation that can completely suppress the protozoa virus. Therefore, for us, this artificial artifact can be used in actual combat. Hearing that, Mugging and the son of the sage both breathed a sigh of relief and fell back into surprise. Only the representatives of the countries seemed to have their hearts chilled, and their expressions turned extremely ugly, especially Chiwu Zhongshuan, who seemed to have thought of something and secretly cursed in his heart. According to what Noah said then, the following development would it not be? Fairyland is the only one who could produce the antidote, just as the cursed children who have joined Fairyland are the only ones who could use artificial divine artifacts. As long as the cursed children are willing to join Fairyland, saving the world and defeating the protozoa is just around the corner. As expected, Noah calmly said something in front of everyone that caused the expressions of all the representatives to change drastically. Therefore, to save the world and humanity, I hereby make a request. I hope that all countries in the world can transfer all the cursed children within their borders to Fairyland and contribute to saving humanity. As he said that, Noah had a thought-provoking smile on his face as he looked at the representatives whose expressions changed abruptly. This is for all of humanity. You won't refuse, right? Chapter 2135. In a split second, the entire conference room that was still noisy a second ago seemed to have been frozen into ice. All sound disappeared without a trace, and even the atmosphere in the air was chilled. Along with it, the hearts of the representatives froze into ice as well. It was only at this moment that all the representatives present knew why Noah would display the power of the fairy tale at the conference, presenting the annihilation operation planned by Fairyland before everyone's eyes. Noah's actions were for one thing, and that was to make all countries who intended to reclaim the cursed children go for wool and come home shorn. The representatives looked at Noah in disbelief. Chiwu Zhongshuan felt his vision darken as he felt a sense of dizziness. Initially, the ultimate goal of this international conference, regardless of which country it was to make Noah spit out all the cursed children that were transferred to Fairyland from all over the world despite having different starting points. But now, Noah was giving them a taste of their own medicine. In turn, with the announcement of an annihilation operation and an artificial divine artifact, he had all the countries send the remaining cursed children in their own country to Fairyland. Could all the countries in the world agree to such a thing? Of course not. They were here to weaken Fairyland's power in the first place, so how could they weaken their own power and strengthen Fairyland's? Looking at the shocked and enraged faces of the representatives, Noah's expression became sarcastic. I know how you feel, but this can't be helped. Now humanity is being threatened by the primitive animals and has reached a point where survival is difficult. If we want to break the deadlock, we can only rely on the artificial divine artifact. This is an indisputable fact. Don't you want to save all of humanity? Don't want to save all of humanity? Most of the representatives of the various countries present did not have such thoughts in mind, because they only wanted to save their own country. Who would be selfless enough to save all of humanity? However, could the representatives of the various countries present say this out loud? Once they did, they would instantly lose the support of the people in their country and be ousted from office. You are twisting words and forcing logic. One of the representatives couldn't help but shout. Even if the artifact could save all of humanity, we don't have to move every cursed child in our country to Fairyland, do we? If you say so, then it's a little wrong. Noah spread his hands. An artificial artifact can greatly enhance the abilities of the cursed child. Every cursed child who obtains an artificial artifact can at least become a powerhouse in the top 500 IP rankings. With such strength, if all of them were to gather, they would definitely be able to defeat all the protozoa. If that's the case, Fairyland should announce the method of crafting artificial divine artifacts, and let every country in the world develop artificial divine artifacts. Wouldn't that be more efficient? Another country's representative said with a trembling voice. Fairyland is weak in the end. If we all work together, We can create more artificial divine artifacts and use them on the cursed children to have a greater chance of banishing the primitive animals. It's a pity that I've just informed everyone of the artifact's side effect. Only Fairyland has the means to eliminate that side effect with the incubation agent, and the only mother that can multiply the incubation agent is the one in Fairyland. Noah reminded as if he was being kind. Even if Fairyland provides the incubation agent to every country in the world, in terms of efficiency alone, instead of shipping it to every country in the world, why not gather the cursed children in Fairyland and use them directly? Wouldn't that be better? We know that it's inefficient, but we can't put the responsibility of saving all of humanity on Fairyland's shoulders, can we? Another country's representative spoke with some difficulty. We would like to do our part as well. I understand everyone's intentions. Noah smiled abruptly. Of course, we at Fairyland would not overestimate ourselves and think that we could save all of humanity alone. It's fortunate that Fairy Tale, which I lead as the center of Fairyland, is a non-governmental organization that faces the world. We would still send the cursed children to every country in the world in the form of commissions. And when the time comes, every country would just have to pay the corresponding remuneration, which could be used to produce incubation agents and artificial divine artifacts. That way, everyone would be satisfied. Satisfied? Satisfied, my foot. Not only would they have to send the remaining cursed children to Fairyland for free, they would have to pay to hire them if there was a need for them in the future? Was there anything in this world that was more ridiculous than that? At that very moment, every country's representative was cursing inwardly, no matter how cultured they were. Only Noah's face was still all smiles. Or are you saying that you don't want to do your part to save all of humanity? Noah mentioned intentionally or otherwise. If that's the case, I believe that the citizens of your countries would be very dissatisfied, and that wouldn't do any good for you. The truth was just that cruel. The representatives of every country thought that they had the upper hand in this international conference, and that they would definitely have Noah under their thumb with the excuse of Fairyland illegally transferring the cursed children within their own borders. However, with Noah stirring things up, things changed completely. If Noah were to announce the existence of the artificial divine artifacts, every human in the world would fall into a frenzy. In order to survive, every citizen of every country would choose to support Fairyland. Moreover, the culture of hatred and rejection of the cursed children had long been ingrained in the hearts of every country's citizens. Every human would certainly wish for all the cursed children in their own countries to disappear and get as far away as possible. That way, if the rulers of every country in the world still did not agree to this matter, then before the citizens of the country object and protest, these rulers would have to wait until they were replaced with a group of politicians who were willing to cooperate with Fairyland. However, in this day and age, there should still be many countries whose rulers are dictators who can rule by terror and completely ignore the voice of the people. Noah changed the topic and turned to look at Chiwu Zhongshuan. He said this with a smile that was not a smile. We can't agree with such people who ignore the will of the people and don't want to contribute to the human race and only care about their own private rights. Therefore, if there really is such a dictator, I think that every country in the world should unite, march into that country's territory, and eradicate such vermin. Don't you think so, President Chiwu? Chiwu Zhongshuan's face turned extremely pale in an instant. The faces of every country's representative present also turned a little pale, and dispirited emotions welled up in their hearts. Lost. This time, it was a complete loss. From the moment Noah announced the artificial artifact, every country in the world was doomed to fail, and even had to turn around and help Fairyland, because the citizens of every country in the world would stand on Fairyland's side, stand on Noah's side. Once, in order to wipe out the entire Tendo family, Noah used the dark side in the hearts of the people in the Tokyo area, and succeeded in achieving his goal. And this time, Noah no longer used the dark side of the people in a small Tokyo area, but the dark side of all humans in the world. The desire to survive was aroused for one's own survival, the sense of belonging for the glory of the past, the hatred that burst out in order to defeat the monster horde. These emotions would be used by Noah and become the stepping stone to achieve the entire Fairyland and to oppress all countries in the world. In the face of these, every country in the world had no other choice. It seems that everyone has made a decision. Looking at the ashen faces of every country's representative present, Noah withdrew his artificial smile, and his face returned to calmness. Now, I have to tell everyone here something. Sins committed by the heavens can be forgiven, but sins committed by oneself are the hardest to bear. These are all your own doing. Noah's gaze swept across the faces of every country's representative. No matter what your purpose is, your actions are sacrificing the happiness of those children. Since you can't give the children a smile in fairyland, then don't even think about the children. With that, Noah ignored the reactions of every country's representative present, and spoke plainly to the Holy Sun beside him. Lord Holy Sun, please announce the contents of today's meeting to the world, and spread the video of fairyland breaching the demonic forest, and tell all humans, who is the one who can save them. Mugging, when you go back, be prepared to receive the cursed children from every country in the world. Noah threw out those words directly. If any country is unwilling to contribute to all of humanity, you know what to do. What else could be done? Of course, it was to make it known to the world, and let them suffer. Mugging and the Holy Sun both suppressed the excitement in their hearts, and nodded. Seeing this, every country's representative present understood. Things could no longer be undone. There's nothing else you want to say, right? Noah said indifferently. If that's the case, this international conference will be adjourned. With that, Noah turned around, and led Mugging and the Holy Sun out of the conference room. Only a group of countries' representatives were left standing in place, unable to recover for a long time. Chapter 21:36. The world would walk towards the light because of Noah alone. In order to increase his chances of winning, Noah had the idea of creating an artificial artifact. Of course, we're only collecting the cursed children in the world. Perhaps there will be new cursed children born in other countries in the future. I'm not the one who created the artificial artifact, it's Athena. Moreover, Aster, Orpheus, and Lilith also contributed a lot. It was because of this that Muroto Kino believed that Noah could change this hopeless world. Immediately, Noah had Hina, Xiashur, and Yenju rush back to fairyland to gather people and spread the news of the annihilation operation in the demonic forest. Even Rintaro patted Noah's shoulder, his heart filled with emotions. When the protozoa were defeated and humans were released from their twisted hearts, perhaps they would be completely divided into two types of people. So, the reason you disappeared for 3 years was to prepare for the artificial artifact? In order to prevent the same thing from happening to the children in the world, it seems that we have to investigate the household records of every country in the world. We can't leave out a single child. God knows how long it would take to recover to its peak. This world was completely distorted after the protogut animals appeared. As the strongest sword spirit, Aster could use a certain degree of steel elven magic. He was quite knowledgeable about the weapon refinement of steel elven magic. After Athena perfected the design of the artificial artifact, he used elven magic to refine the outer shell. In the corridor of the embassy, Rintaro learned about the whole process and result of the meeting from Mugging, and said to Noah in surprise and joy. After all, unlike in the past, the current fairy tale could go up against countries all over the world at any time. The first type was those who were liberated from their hatred and were enlightened. They no longer stuck to the past, and chose to move towards the future. In fact, Noah had already asked Athena to design an artificial artifact for the cursed children. Therefore, Noah did not take credit at all, and only explained to Rintaro. Noah, who didn't know what Seiji, Mugging, and Rintaro were thinking, was still immersed in his own thoughts. This was the only thing that could be confirmed. Could it be that the child is the same as Xiashur and has intelligent protozoan genes in his body? Orpheus and Lilith were known as the dragon gods with unlimited power. Both of them gave their own snakes to the artificial artifacts at the moment when the artificial artifacts were formed, so that the artificial artifacts could gain power and produce amazing effects. Some countries don't even register their cursed children, Rintaro said. Even in terms of strength, in this world, Aster, Athena, Orpheus, and Lilith were unbeatable existences. Naturally, driven by the world's pattern, the latter would begin to flow towards fairyland, while the former would be shut out. Rintaro's surprised words made Noah, who had been calm and strong in the meeting room, feel a little helpless. However, Noah had never thought of asking Athena to create an artificial artifact that could destroy the gods. As long as it could increase the collective combat power of fairy tale, and could be mass-produced, it would be enough. Moreover, the first to be distorted was none other than the humans themselves. The ones who actually carried out the plan were Aster, Athena, Orpheus, Lilith, Hina, Xiaoshi, Yanzhu, and the other girls. Moreover, the one who created the artificial artifacts was not Noah, but Athena. That was just an excuse to fool the representatives of the countries. I didn't think that things would develop like this. That child called Athena could actually create such an artificial artifact? Mugging said in disbelief. In other words, Noah had only drawn up a plan from the beginning. There was one person who, in less than 5 years, saved all the innocent children in the world who were hated and ostracized by humans. So, that child is that powerful? That's true. Mugging composed herself and said, there are still many things that need to be done. In order to give those children the same happiness, we have to come up with countermeasures. Otherwise, once those countries with bad intentions hide them, we can only be kept in the dark, and let those children suffer silently in places we can't see. We have to think of a solution to that as well. One was to follow the darkness in their hearts and turn their hatred towards the cursed child, who still had the blood of the original intestine, when the original intestine animal was defeated. However, this way, the cursed children from all over the world will all gather in fairyland. The ultimate goal of my creation of fairy tale is finally about to be achieved. And this was also for those children. Of course. Noah smiled. With that in mind, Sei Tianzi, Mugging, and Rintaro looked at Noah's side profile, and felt a certain feeling in their hearts. Hearing Noah's murmur, Sei Tianzi and Mugging gave Noah a gentle look. Until the day when everyone acknowledges the existence of the cursed child. Then the human race would usher in unprecedented prosperity and peace. After today, I'm afraid this world won't be peaceful for a while. Noah murmured. However, when that time comes, the human race would basically be crippled. Not even the 4 wise men? Sei Tianzi's expression became incredulous. When it comes to wisdom, I'm afraid that even the 4 wise men who are known as the world's strongest brains are no match for her. In the world of Demon Academy, Athena had already studied artificial artifacts for a period of time, and her attainment in this field was almost comparable to that of Azazel. As for Athena, with the help of Aster, Orpheus, and Lilith, she created hundreds of artificial artifacts overnight. Who would have thought? It was impossible for Athena to create another divine tool of annihilation with such a level of mastery over the artifact. Noah nodded and gently stroked the guild emblem on the back of his hand. Noah's words made the 3 of them come to a realization. For this reason, Athena even conducted research on artificial artifacts for a period of time. It wasn't until Noah obtained the specific information of the domain from Tina that Athena came up with an idea. She gradually perfected the artificial artifact that could enhance the abilities of the cursed child. Athena is indeed very smart, and can even be called wise. Noah did not confirm Mugging's words and only said this. Moreover, instead of dealing with them one by one, it was better to let them kneel down. When the artificial artifacts worn by Hina and the others were activated, the gemstones embedded in them were formed by Orpheus and Lilith's snakes. Noah could even let the 4 girls go to those countries that were looking for trouble. It would only take a day for the world to be left with only 2 independent countries, Fairyland and the Tokyo area. Of course, at that time, Noah did not intend to disclose the function of the artificial artifact to achieve the goal of making all the countries in the world obediently hand over all the cursed children. He simply wanted to increase the strength of fairy tale. That was, if they followed this man, it would definitely not be a mistake. It was because of the help of Aster, Orpheus, and Lilith that Athena was able to quickly create hundreds of artificial artifacts overnight. The method of creating artificial artifacts was not developed by Noah, but by Asashel's experimental results. After that, Noah had a conversation with the Holy Son in the holy abode, and suddenly thought of the existence of artificial artifacts, which led to a series of ideas. Whether it is Aster, Athena, Orpheus, or Lilith, their abilities are beyond your imagination. Don't underestimate these children. The Holy Son Mugung and Rintaro, who did not know about this, were a little surprised. Under such circumstances, the appearance of the children who inherited the protozoan virus became the victims of this distortion. After the cursed children of the world were gathered in fairyland, these children would be reborn. Many people's hearts became tired, distorted, and even deformed under the direct pressure of life and death. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Sword of Destiny YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.